Do you want to budge up next side? I need to be on this side of the camera so we have to see the screen. Oh, by the way, the microphone will pick up stuff, so.
Good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for the slight delay in getting us going. Welcome to the November meeting of the Audit Committee. Welcome to everybody who is present today. Just quick safety information. There is no planned fire drill, so if the alarm goes off, please exit by the main entrance and turn right down the ramp and assemble by the cathedral. My name is Councillor Tim Rippington. I'm chair of today's meeting. Item 2 is apologies for absence. Alison, are you happy?
No apologies, Chair. Everybody's here.
Thank you very much. No apologies. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Does anybody on the committee have a declaration of interest to make? Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm a director of Bristol Ways, and the reason why I'm declaring that interest is because Bristol Ways did have an involvement in the Stepping Up programme, although I think it's not actually referred to as such in the papers, but I thought it was worth declaring that interest.
Okay, thank you, that's noted. Yeah, just to say, could people talk into their microphones, just as we're in the chamber, it's a bit difficult hearing here. Thanks. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask if these minutes are agreed as a correct record? Is everybody happy? Thank you very much. We then have the action sheet. Are there any comments on the action sheet? David.
Thank you, Chair. I thought we might do a round of introductions first, so. Page 22 of the big bundle, there's a table about comparisons between 2023 and 2024 year-end position, about the amount of debt that we are in, and the last item on that table is about parking services in the clean air zone that states we have £32 million worth of debt outstanding on the clean air zone. Now I do know that, and from being on Transport Committee, that a lot of money is being spent from the clean air zone proceeds. So I'd like to know how much money you actually had that we can actually spend for the clean air zone, because I know a lot of things that we are working on at the moment, like a task and finish group on bus services using income for the clean air zone, whether that money is actually available to spend, please.
I'm not sure if that's something that Tony's able to address.
So, Chair, the report which I think you're referring to produces the Council's debt position as at the 31st of March 24. Obviously, we're ongoing in relation to making collection arrangements So we hadn't written any of that debt off at that point in time, and therefore we are within assuming that that debt would be collected. Obviously, if we go through the debt collection processes and that's not the case, then we would have to consider how we would write that off. Within the sort of overall budget envelope, what we have done is collected a significant amount of money which is being spent as part of the budget process. From my understanding, looking any further detail into this, Chair, we have collected sufficient to meet our programme of works to date. But obviously it's an ongoing process, and should debt become uncollectible, then we would obviously have to consider the write-off of that.
Thank you. But can we have an action to say how much is actually available to spend in terms of revenue?
So it's an ongoing process. So obviously the debt which you refer to was on one particular day.
Yeah.
So obviously that
Can I rephrase my question then? Can we have a statement about how much has been collected that we've actually got on the 31st of March 2024, so we've got a comparison?
Chair, we could provide that to the Transport Committee if they wish to have it.
I think that would be very reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you. I take David's admonishment about introduction, so perhaps if you'd like to do that now. I think most people know each other on this side of the room, but if we want to just go around briefly and introduce ourselves.
Thank you. I'm Nicholas Haynes, I'm Vice Chair of the Committee.
Councillor David Wilcox, representing Locksmeath Ward.
Thank you, Patrick Coster, Hoddles House, Adward.
Carl Vans at Door Central Ward.
Abdul Malik, Council Fashion Ward.
Councillor Jonathan Hacker, Stockwood Ward.
Simon Cook's an independent member.
Adi Adebayo, Independent Member.
Councillor Tom Blenkinsop, Avon Alpha Norris. Councillor Rob Logan, Philwood.
Alison Taylor, Democratic Services.
Myself, Tim Rippington, Chair.
Sibamza, Chief Internal Auditor.
Tony Peckham, Interim Director of Finance.
Richard Young, Head of Strategic Finance.
Beth Bowers, External Auditor with Grant Thornton.
Chris Evans, External Auditor from Grant Thornton.
Jeanette Beale from Grant Thornton.
Thank you.
John Clayton, Finance Business Partner in Corporate Finance.
Melanie Watson, Internal Audit.
Neil Hewson, KPMG, Internal Audit.
Henry Britton, Fraud Apprentice.
Louise Lee, Audit Manager with Internal Audit.
Alison Mellis, Deputy Chief Internal Auditor.
Thank you. I'm just not sure whether your microphone was working, Richard. Can you check it again?
Yes, it is.
We'll move on to Chair's business, item 6. So, I'd just like to remind members that the committee doesn't function as a quasi judicial panel. We are here to oversee the work of our internal and external audit teams and to give them support where necessary. So we can ask questions of them in relation to their work, and we can call officers to answer our questions, but we're not ourselves here to pass judgment. If we don't like the answers we receive, we can ask for things to be looked at again, or we can ask to speak to other more senior officers. We also don't have the ability to pursue complaints against any individual councillors, present or past. This is within our remit and must be left to the established complaints process. Having said all that, I do expect we'll be having a robust debate today on some of the issues that have arisen, and I wouldn't want to stop that for a minute, but we need to be aware of the parameters within which we're holding our debates. So I'd like to move on to item 7, which is public forum. We have questions first from public forum. Sorry, bear with me a second, my computer has just
Can you pass it to your...
dropped me out.
Just ask yourself to check.
So Mike Aldrieve, I believe. Mike, you've asked three questions. You've seen the answers to the questions. Just one thing, Mike, I'd like to say, in relation to your question about your first question.
Yes.
Just to say that I've gone back to our legal department because it seems that the reason you were given for a previous question being blocked wasn't one of the words that's actually used in the Constitution, but they've assured me that the reasons for why they refused that question were valid within the Constitution, and I've asked them to make sure that in future they do use the correct wording. Okay. Do you have two supplementaries?
No, I want to say something there. I've had you.
Well, you can ask two supplementaries now, Mike. But it's not an open session.
No, because you withdrew my statements, and I've had statements withdrawn to council. The statement you withdrew last time meant that the questions I asked had no context. And I was told quite clearly that it was vexatious with reasons. So I want to know, where are you now? What are you now saying? Because you didn't reply to an email I sent you in the week about this, and now you're telling me that there is room within the Constitution. So are you going back to the old defamatory, offensive, frivolous one? Because you've given me a reason, and now you're withdrawing your reason.
So the reason, what I'm saying is that the reason that was advised for not allowing the question was within the context of those words within the Constitution, but what was written to you didn't include those words. Yes.
But I can't see that. Where does it say that in the Constitution? You're saying, first of all, let me get the question up a minute on my phone. I'm sorry about this, but it's just continuous. This is how you attempt to wear people down. This is just a joke.
Sorry, Mike, do you have any supplementary questions? Because I can't, I can only accept supplementary questions from you at this point, Mike, so please ask.
My supplementary question is, where exactly in the Constitution does it say that public statements and questions can be blocked on the reason of vexatious? Please explain your argument. What officers advised you and what advice did they give?
So the advice was...
And where have you got discretion? This is the other thing. I can't see any discretion for the chair.
I'm told that I have discretion, Mike. Yes.
Where does it say that in the Constitution? I asked in my previous question exactly... I asked in that question, the first question that I asked you, can you state specifically where in the Constitution it says that? You give me a half answer. This is the problem all the time with more or less every question I ask, and other members of the public ask on these matters. We get half evasive, obfuscatory answers. We don't get an honest answer. I would like an honest answer, please. Where does it say that in the Constitution? I'm sorry, but it's not acceptable.
Hang on, can I speak now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some sympathy with you in terms of the answers that do get given to some of these questions. And what I'm told in my advice is that your question was defamatory, frivolous or offensive, or your statement.
That isn't what was said to me when you withdrew it.
No, and that's what I'm saying, is that what was said to you wasn't correct in that response. Okay. So I've asked them in future to make sure that the response is correct in terms of why if any of your future statements are rejected, and hopefully they won't be, why that, stating the correct reasons why it would be. If you would like me to get them to rewrite to you and explain why that statement was rejected, I'm happy to do that.
Yes.
Have you got a second supplementary?
I do. You declared my previous statement regarding freebies to stepping up CIC from Bristol Waste Company vexatious. And I take it that means you consider matters relating to Bristol Waste Company resolved. Could you please explain the nature of pass-through agreements to me? This refers to the last statement that I made. What specifically was the pass-through agreement at Bristol Waste? And do you see any risks involved in pass-through agreements, particularly a pass-through agreement to a company which is related to Councillor Craig's company, but of which she isn't a director? Do you see any risks there?
So that's not something I can answer. I'd have to get you a written response to that question.
Okay, thank you. I do note that you gave that, as the chair, you gave that response to my last question, which kind of indicates you might appreciate what's going on and have an understanding what the issues are.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. I did note that in Mr. Aldridge's first question, he does ask for a specific reference to the Constitution. Could we make sure that is provided to him, please?
Yes, I did notice that he'd referenced the correct part of the Constitution. It's just that the wording we had responded to him with was not the wording that was in the Constitution, and that's why he's querying it. So, we have a question from Laura, but she's not here. So, Dan, you've had responses to your questions. Do you have supplementary?
Yes, thank you for the responses. I have a supplementary to my second question, which was where and when was the transformation for the housing department taken? The response says that the decision was taken by the corporate leadership team on 9th of April 2024 in response to the Savills report. I do not understand the answer. First, this transformation programme is clearly a key decision. It affects expenditure of over £500,000 and affects 2 or more wards. Key decisions can only be taken by officers in urgent situations. Second, I can see no record of any housing and consumer standard programme in the published decision list. It appears to me that this decision was taken unlawfully, in secret and not published. Please explain to me how my understanding is wrong.
Do we have anyone here who can respond to Dan on this particular question? I'm sorry, Dan, we don't have anyone here who can respond to that. We'll have to get you a written response.
Okay, when will I get that written response by, please?
We'll just ask for a response as soon as possible. I can't give you an exact time.
Chair, I'll write to you and ask for a date that the answer will be given by. There is an issue with officers not being here and answers not being given until the day of the next meeting, which means that subsequent questions can't be asked in time, which is very frustrating.
You will get a response within 5 days.
Thank you. And unfortunately, you blocked my statement as well. I'm not going to speak to it, but I wish to read from a High Court decision, Heason versus Public Services Ombudsman.
Sorry, Dan, if you haven't got a
Article
statement...
10 of the European Convention provides everyone has a right to freedom of expression. While freedom of expression is important to everyone, Strasbourg has recognised the importance of expression in the political sphere. In the political context, a degree of the immoderate, offensive, shocking, disturbing, and
Dan, how long
I'm going to finish.
for?
I'm going to about 60 seconds more. That would not and other language that would not be acceptable outside that context is tolerated. The protection is not limited to expressions or critiques of political views, but rather extends to all matters of public administration and public concern, including comments about the adequacy or inadequacy of performance of public duties done by others. As with all convention rights that are...
Do you have a statement now?
As with all convention rights that are not absolute, the state has a margin of appreciation in how it protects the right of freedom of expression and how it restricts that right. However, that margin must be construed narrowly in this context. There is little scope for restrictions on political speech or on debate on questions of public interest. Strasbourg has also considered the position
Dan,
of...
if you don't stop now, I'm afraid I'm going to have to...
I've got 20 seconds to go. I've got 20 seconds to go.
We'll postpone the meeting.
Strasbourg has also considered the position of not elected public servants in this context. Civil servants are, of course, open to criticism, including public criticism. The acceptable limits of criticism are wider than for non-elected public servants. Where critical comment is made of a civil servant, such that the public interest in protecting them, as well as their private interests are in play, the requirement to protect the civil servant must be weighed against the interest of open discussion of matters of public concern. Chair, you need to get independent legal advice. You are writing people's right to freedom of expression. The advice you're receiving is from someone who's failed to recognise a conflict of interest.
Mike, you have a statement, please.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much, Dan. Well said. I welcome the Grant Thornton audit report, item 11, on stepping up. However, I find, with my background knowledge from FOIs and my experience of 25 years plus as an external auditor in local government and the health service, woefully inadequate, superficial and lacking in key issues and details. There's absolutely no mention of the risks of fraud, corruption and cronyism that the Stepping Up programme presented. There was no business case. This led to £600,000 case spend by Bristol City Council alone. Councillor Craig introduced Christine Bamford to the very first HR meeting back in 2016, offering pro bono support to help with the staff survey. The lack of key documentation of the 3 contracts over 4 years is totally shocking. I'd like to quote from a local counter-fraud service document from the NHS. The use of pilot projects. Pilots can be used to circumvent procurement regulations and are a way to introduce a supplier into an organisation. Once this happens, contract creep can develop and the supplier's position in the body becomes stronger. The use of pilots should be examined by auditors. I don't think that's been done, especially where it results in high-value work being awarded to the supplier involved. So that's exactly what happened at Stepping Up. There was no business case. There was poor contract management, constant overspend, projects started without any knowledge of finance staff at Bristol City Council. There were constant threats of reputational difficulties if the programme didn't go ahead. It's effective to I was listening to Radio 4 this morning about scams. They put pressure on you, they put pressure on your reputation. And also there's the sunk cost fallacy where once people are sucked into these things, they think, oh well, I better go ahead now and just approve the next one. There was a change control notice for £197,000 which related to a misunderstanding of the contract, which on the face of it looks like underbidding by the supplier. Underbidding is a serious problem in terms of fraud and corruption. There was a total lack of leadership from senior officers. The only person accepted that I can see was Denise Murray, who seemed to be fighting against the tide of enablement. Directors appearing to look for solutions to avoid procurement regulations. I see that today Councillor Craig has issued a statement saying that she believes she acted in line with ethical guidelines. It's hardly surprising that she might be confused about ethics given the lack of member code scrutiny. And when we made complaints about Councillor Craig and her tweets to people, the monitoring officer and the head of legal took 5 months to even decide that my complaint wasn't valid, and then told me that I was politically motivated. Another complaint that was made, it was all done in secret, so there was no publicity. The monitoring officer also thought it was acceptable to ease the freebies that Bristol Waste Company were giving to Stepping Up Company by offering to draw up legal agreements for these. Now, whether that's legal or not is neither here nor there, but whether it's actually ethical for the monitoring officer to
Can you draw to a close now, please?
Yes, I will. What I would say is that the Audit Committee has terms of reference. 1.10, audit activity to comment on the scope and depth of the external audit work and to ensure it gives value for money. Why did it take Grant Thornton a year after I wrote to them to do any work at all? First of all, they told me there was nothing wrong. Then I made a formal complaint about them, and now they say there is some work to be done.
Mike,
And this is the result.
finish up now.
And that is my statement. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. That marks the end of public forum. Thank you. We'll move on to item 9 on the agenda. Statement of Accounts 2023-24 incorporating letter of representation and AGS. Attorney, I believe you're presenting this to us.
Sorry, microphone.
Sorry, Tony, I don't think that microphone is working. Yeah. Give it a... No, it's very faint. Could you try a different one?
I'll try this one.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's better.
Yes, great, thanks. So much to think about. So these are fundamentally the accounts you saw on the 1st of October. We've made 2 adjustments, not some typo adjustments. One is a standard thing we do every year, which is to replace the draft group accounts with the company's audited accounts. Once we have them, so we've done that. And you'll see those adjustments set out in Grant Thornton's report. The other is to add a contingent liability note around a potential challenge to the arrangements we have for the DSG safety valve. There is one further point I need to mention today. Since sending the accounts out for distribution, you may have seen in the press references to Thurrock Council and the potential for legal action against a number of local authorities. Bristol has been mentioned, and we think that will lead to another contingent liability note. We don't think it's going to have a material impact on the accounts. We know very little at the moment, but we think that will lead to a further contingent liability note. So what I'm asking is with committee's approval, that you approve the accounts as you have them in front of you today, and then delegate to the chair, if the chair and the committee are agreeable, to then approve any changes we need to make. But we've had a discussion with our auditors, and we think it will simply be a contingent liability note we will need to add. I'm happy to take any questions.
So, obviously this statement of accounts came to the last committee meeting, so really just looking for any questions about things that have changed since then, and about Tony's last comment about whether we can accept with that one caveat. So, who'd like to go first? We'll start with Abdul.
Thank you very much. Just with reference to what you just mentioned about the contingent liability, can you provide maybe a bit more details about the scale and the potential impact if they become actual costs?
Unfortunately, I can't. It is obviously the subject of potential litigation, so I can't really say any more than we don't. The fact that it's a contingent liability is because we don't believe there is a material cost to the council. So otherwise, it would be effectively a provision. So that's pretty much all I can tell you at the moment, I'm afraid.
Sorry, just supplementary. So does that mean that there's no material changes to the financial accounts?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Patrick, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I actually want to build on one of the responses to the public forum that was submitted, please. On page 78 of the main bundle, 47 of the report, It goes into detail on social housing standards. Excuse me. So it talks about the council-wide housing and consumer standards transformation programme. And I noticed in the public forum, we've got, it's confirmed that the Housing and Consumer Standards Programme was approved by the corporate leadership team on the 9th of April of this year. That's all well and good. I did have a look on the decisions register and I couldn't see that, so I was just wondering if there was a reason that was missing. It does seem like a very large decision, or perhaps I was looking in the wrong place.
I would need to have a look. I can't comment on that one at the moment. I would need to come back to you, Councillor.
Thank you, that would be really good, thank you.
Nick? Then David?
Thank you, Tony. I'm happy with the report and what you've presented to us. A comment about the way that it's presented. Appreciate that there are changes between it goes to us once and then a second time. If we were able to highlight those more effectively, that would be much easier for next year. So there was a bit of a paper chase in order to find out what those very small amendments were. It could simply be set out in the report rather than referring to a different item on the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Malak actually answered the question I wanted to ask.
Sorry, say that again? Your question's been answered. Okay. Any other questions on this item? No? Okay. So the recommendation is that the Audit Committee approves the audited statement accounts for the year ended 31st of March. But I believe you're now asking for that to be slightly amended.
Slightly, yes, Chair. So I'm asking for you to approve them as they stand, but potentially, if we do decide we need to put this note in, contingent liability note, the committee delegate the authority to you to agree that note with us, so we don't need to bring the accounts back again.
Okay. Do I need to actually have that written so that I can recommend it to the committee, or are we happy for Tony and Alison to formalise the wording after this meeting? I would rather have the full recommendation now so that we can all approve it. That's possible. So can we just agree the form of words? So, Audit Committee approves the audited statement of accounts for the year ended 31st of March 24, subject to...
subject to the committee giving you delegated authority, Chair, to approve a additional contingent liability note.
Sorry, was that to approve a contingent liability note?
Yeah. Should be required, of course, yes.
So the full recommendation is Audit Committee approves the audited statement of accounts for the year ended 31st of March 2024, subject to the committee giving delegated responsibility to the Chair to approve a contingent liability note. Can I ask if the committee is happy to accept that recommendation? Thank you. Recommendation accepted. Item 10 is the Grant Thornton ISA 260 report, which I believe Beth is going to present for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to the statement of accounts, we brought a previous version of this report to the last committee. So in order to aid members in reviewing the items which are new, those are covered by blue text rather than the standard black text. We're happy to report that our audit work is almost complete and that there are a few final procedures that we will need to undertake after the committee once Now that the accounts have been approved, once they have been signed by relevant officers and members, we will be able to undertake those final procedures. Within our executive summary, we noted 2 areas of work that were still outstanding at the time of drafting the report. I can confirm that we have completed all of our work in relation to additions, and our housing benefit final procedures are being undertaken this afternoon. So when I arrived at committee, they weren't quite finished, but nearly there, so I expect them to be completed by close of business today. So it will simply be those final procedures. We are still proposing an unqualified opinion is given on the financial statements, and it is also worth drawing members' attention to the fact that within this report we also comment on the findings as a result of an objection which was received. This was in relation to the previous period of accounts, the 2023 year end, but we've reported our findings within this report to ensure that committee has sight of that. I wasn't proposing to say any more on the detail of the report. I'm very happy to take any questions through you, Chair.
Yeah, as we've said, highlighted very usefully in blue the changes since the last time the report came. So if anybody has any questions on that. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of points. One of them very minor. On page 266, I think that the proposed fee for the audit should be 644,806 and not 641,806. So you might want to have a look at that. That's just a minor point. Yeah, I'd like a bit more clarity on the reason for not concluding on the audit certificate for 2022-23. I can see from the report that it relates to the register of members' interests, and so I'd just like to understand the link between that and the financial statements, so that I can appreciate why it is that that an issue with regard to the register of members' interest should hold up the issue of the completion certificate for the financial statements.
So I presume you mean in relation to the objection reporting. So an audit certificate cannot be given until all of our relevant work is concluded, and that includes where we receive an objection on the financial statements. We have to have concluded that work, be able to confirm that there is nothing further that we need to undertake in terms of our responsibilities in order to then be able to issue the audit certificate. This does mean, therefore, that the certificate and the financial statements opinion can come at different times. There are some other responsibilities that we have. For example, we have to report to the National Audit Office in relation to requests they make of us in their role as the auditor of the whole of government accounts, and where we haven't completed any detailed work under that by the time we issue the financial statements audit opinion, that is another reason that we would hold the certificate. I can confirm that the 22-23 certificate has now been given, now that the objection work has been concluded, but it wasn't given at the time we gave the financial statements opinion because we hadn't yet concluded that work. At the point that we gave the financial statements opinion, we also considered whether that objection would have had a material impact on the financial statements, and had we deemed that it would have, we would not have given the financial statements opinion until we had concluded the objection work. However, in that specific case, we determined there was no material impact on the financial statements, so we concluded the opinion and then we completed the objection work later.
Thank you. That's fine. I'm just trying to understand the link between the register of interest and the financial statements.
So the link between them would be that when an objection is raised on the financial statements, it can be raised either in relation to a matter within the statement of accounts, or it can be raised in a matter that is the subject of some of our wider responsibilities and powers as auditors. This particular objection was raised under the latter, i.e. in relation to our value for money arrangements. Hence, we have reported findings under the same terminology we use in our auditor's annual reports, and they are improvement recommendations that we have identified rather than being adjustments to the financial statements. So no direct correlation, but it relates to work that we undertake as auditors.
That's fine, thank you for clarifying that.
David.
Thank you, Chair. One overall statement and a couple of questions. We seem to have reverted to reports coming from Grant Thornton that we can't index or can't search within. They seem to be bitmaps again, and I thought we fixed that a couple of years ago. So if we could have a report that we could search through, that would be really useful. My questions. On page 255 of the Big Bundle, we talk about archetypes. Can we confirm what archetype actually means? Does it mean the classification of the building, or is that some other definition of what an archetype is?
Yeah, through you, Chair, it's absolutely the classification of the type of building. So the council, its housing estate, has a lot of different characteristics within which the council's valuers will use to value properties of a similar type. So, for example, an archetype would be a 2-bedroom flat. A different archetype might be an end-of-terrace 3-bedroom house compared to a mid-terrace or a semi-detached. So that's how the valuers within the council will differentiate between different types of properties within the housing estate.
Thank you for that clarification. And on page 256, we talk about intangible assets. That £26 million of depreciated intangible assets, how does that relate to how many other assets we've got within the council? Is that hundreds of millions of pounds? And the scale of things, how big is it, please?
So in the scale of overall assets, it's rather small in comparison when investment property, for example, is hundreds of millions, as is operational property. In the scale of intangible assets, it's a little bit bigger than that and makes up a decent proportion, but in terms of overall assets, not a large proportion at all.
Thank you.
Nick, I think you had a question, and then Rob.
Thanks. So I'll look at the three issues that were raised as significant weaknesses in the value for money findings. So I'll go backwards through them. So page 249 is a worsening position.
Sorry, Chair, do you mind, would it make more sense to take those questions in the next agenda item, as that's the substantive part of what I appreciate. Within this report we do refer to those items, but it might make more sense once my colleague Jeanette has managed to give her introduction into the detail of the report to take them then. If you're
I was going to suggest the same thing, if that's,
that's fine.
That's okay, assuming they're all referring to items that are in that subsequent report.
So this report contains some new information, and the only new information in it is value for money, and that is in another report. So yes, I'll pass over this one, but I think
there is other new information in this report apart from the value for money. Does anybody have a question? Rob, is your question?
I'm not sure. I was going to ask the questions similar to Nick's area, so we'll come back to that. My other question was on the section on IT security, which is page 240. Is that part of the next report, or is that part of here? That's part of here. Good. I just wanted to understand the meaning of non-significant. So you've identified two systems that have non-significant weaknesses that are mainly to do with things like security access and passport control. Are they non-significant because the council is doing something about it? Or are they non-significant because they are not that worrying themselves?
So it's a combination of the two. Non-significant would mean items that from our perspective we don't believe would have a material, so from a financial perspective, impact on the financial statements, or a material impact on the wider organisation. So a good example might be if the council has got in place some compensating controls that don't necessarily prevent something from happening but might detect it after the fact, that's more likely to be a lower level of weakness identified than if there was a gaping hole in the council's IT systems without any form of compensating control. That would not be a much higher elevated level of risk.
So is it both of those? The reason these are non-significant?
One or the other, dependent on, it could be both, it could be one, it would depend on the specific system and the specifics of the findings, but from our perspective, members should take comfort that we did not find any significant issues in relation to IT. Whilst there are improvements that can be made, I would probably equate them to improvement recommendations within our value for money report rather than the key level of recommendation where we are suggesting immediate action.
Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for preparing this, as always. On page 226 of the big bundle, or page 11 of the report, it says you did not identify any issues with regard to the valuation of land and buildings, which is encouraging. On the next page following, it does say it identified an incorrect property archetype. I'm realising as I asked this, you partly answered this for David's question, but could I just confirm that's an issue, that's not considered an issue of property valuation, that's considered that the property was assigned to the wrong archetype for valuing?
So it is an issue in relation to property valuation. However, the way that we separate the sections of our report is based on the different significant risk areas that we identify, and we separate operational property of the council with council dwellings, i.e. the housing stock that the council owns, because they are valued in very different ways. Hence, one portion of reporting states that we didn't identify any issues because we didn't identify any in relation to the operational property, but we did identify some issues in relation to the housing stock.
I see, thank you, that makes sense. Related to that, please, I saw that the range between the valuation, the competing valuations, excuse me, Grant Thornton came up with a figure of £3.7 million overvaluation. Sorry, this is on page 227 for reference. While management identified, so Grant Thornton came up with 3.7 million overvaluation. The council identified a £1.2 million undervaluation. That's quite a range of 4.9 million, if my maths is correct. So, and that's for one council dwelling, unless am I reading that incorrectly then?
So that's across the entirety of council dwellings rather than for one specific property.
I
it would
see.
be a particularly palatial property,
Okay.
Should one have that significant range. It essentially boils down to the fact that we use different pieces of what we call indices to analyse movements in property compared to management. We are not valuers, but we have access to some valuer data, but generally it tends to be less specialised than the data that management have access to and are able to utilise in their assessments. So what we also do is we employ our own experts who are valuers to support us in reviewing and determining whether there are any significant issues. We report these numbers to you as they are above our triviality threshold, but because they are not close to our materiality threshold, we are not suggesting that the overall valuation is in any way materially incorrect.
Thank you, that's incredibly helpful for understanding. I do appreciate that. I have one more question on a different matter, but I'll let Abdul go first. Well, thank you. Actually, similar to Councillor Hucker's point on the register of interests, this is on page 245, I believe, of the big bundle. Oh, sorry, wait, next slide. Okay, excuse me, I must have misunderstood that one.
All right. Abdul.
Thank you, and thank you for the report on the updated sections. Page 245, we have some blue script here, and it seems that it's a new page completely from the last report, maybe. And it addresses or talks about an objection that was raised in July 2023 with regard to the register of interest of members. And then it seems that there was a response to the objector on the 23rd of October 2024, and since then these improvements have been made. So those are That's brilliant. It's welcome. Can you just allude to what that was about, please? Because I just feel that we've got something else coming up later, but it would be important to understand if some of the issues have been resolved. Thank you.
So objection matters are matters that are between the objector themselves and the external auditors. So it wouldn't be appropriate for me to be providing specifics in terms of the detail. This is why we report findings to committee here and why we've brought these two improvement recommendations for you as members to have sight of some of the outcomes of our work. But it wouldn't be appropriate to give you the specific detail because they are personal communications between an individual who is a local elector and us as external auditors. These findings are items that we recommend management puts in place some action to take as a result. At the point that we reported these back in October, they hadn't been implemented, but I cannot comment on whether they have been fully implemented. That would more be a question for management.
I think, again, this is what we're going to come on to in the next item. Abdul, I think it relates. So. Okay. So, don't think I've got any more questions.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask a supplementary to that, please? It's just come to my mind. Why is this in the updated section and it wasn't here the last time we saw this report then, please?
So the last time you saw the report, we hadn't concluded on the objection work for the 22-23 objection, hence there wasn't a specific finding at that point in time to be able to report. We were still going through the process of agreeing these recommendations with management. But it was always our intention to report this to committee. It would have just been whether it came in a completely separate report or through another report that we were already bringing to members.
Okay.
Yes, Chair, just seems a bit of a coincidence it's here at the same time as we have.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the Audit Committee approve Grant Thornton's audit report for 2023-24 and the action plan agreed by management. Is everybody happy to approve? Okay, that's approved. Thank you. We now move on to item 11, which is the Internal Auditor's Annual Report on Bristol City Council. And I think, Beth, you're going to present this again? Oh, sorry, I've got the wrong title for that, haven't I? Just bear with me a sec. Yeah, I think that it's not actually internal auditor's report, is it? That's how it's described in the papers, but it's external auditor's report, yes. Yeah.
Correct, it is the interim auditor's annual report. Just for members' information, so Jeanette will talk through the detail. I will just do a quick summary prior to handing over to Jeanette. For members' information, this report is labelled as interim purely because we have not yet given our opinion on the financial statements. It is only at that point that an auditor's annual report can become finalised, but so that you are all clear, our work is complete and we expect this report to only change in order to update the dates of signing of the financial statements throughout the report, rather than there still being work required in order to conclude on our responsibilities. So this report covers our value for money output. It is a report that we bring to this committee on an annual basis. It reports findings in 3 areas: financial sustainability, governance and the 3 E's. You will note from the executive summary that we have identified significant weaknesses in 2 of those areas. Significant weaknesses result in key recommendations being made to the authority. We also have other types of recommendations that we can use in order to report findings. The first is an improvement recommendation. This is aligned to best practice that we are recommending for the authority. We can also utilise statutory recommendations, which we have the power to do. I can confirm we have not utilised our powers in recording any statutory recommendations within our work for the Auditor's Annual Report for 23-24. Jeanette will talk through some of the detail, as I said, but before we get to that, I wanted to address the section on the Stepping Up programme. So I recognise that this has gathered a lot of interest in advance of the committee, both from members and from members of the public. To be clear, our work in this area arose from an objection which was received in relation to the 21-22 financial statements. We undertook work and we responded to the objector accordingly. Further information was then shared with us by one of the objectors and we undertook further procedures. The outcomes of those further procedures are then reported here. For the avoidance of doubt, we did not find that there were any relationships which should have been disclosed but were not. We only found that there were perceptions that there were some relationships that should have been disclosed. We determined as a result of our response to the objector for the 21-22 financial statements objection that this matter did not meet the threshold for a public interest report, and our further work here also confirms that it does not meet the threshold for a public interest report, hence our reporting of improvement recommendations within this report. Both Jeanette and I will be more than happy to take any questions on the report, but before that I will let Jeanette talk through some of the detail.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk really through the significant weaknesses that we've identified, really, which are really the key issues that the Council needs to address. So first of all, thinking about financial sustainability, there's no doubt that 23-24 has continued to be a challenging year for the Council. Whilst it delivered a break-even position, this required the use of reserves to meet budget pressures and savings shortfalls. Demand continued to increase in adult social care, children's social care and temporary accommodation. And as a result of the Council is forecasting an overspend in 24-25. The Council has maintained a prudent level of reserves with a drop in reserves in 23-24. The Council intends to maintain reserve levels at 5 to 6% of net revenue expenditure going forward. However, we consider that financial sustainability remains a significant weakness in arrangements, and as a result we have continued to raise the key recommendation that we raised previously, that action should be taken to contain expenditure and deliver savings on a recurrent basis across all service areas, with specific focus on adult and children's services to ensure that transformation programmes deliver as planned. We also considered the dedicated schools grant and note that the deficit has continued to increase. In 23-24, the Council joined the Department for Education's Safety Valve programme. Unfortunately, delivery to the agreed plan has been a challenge, and as at August 2024, the Council is 15 million off plan and is expecting further deterioration as the Council addresses the Education, Health and Care Plan backlog. As a result, we consider that the DSG deficit continues to represent a significant risk to financial sustainability. And again, we raise the key recommendation that we raised previously, that the Council should continue to drive forward its dedicated schools grant management plan to ensure actions are delivered as planned and at pace. In respect of governance, we did not identify any significant weaknesses in this area. We have, although, raised 2 improvement recommendations which can be found in the body of the report. Within improving economy and efficiency and effectiveness, the Council reported its performance. Sorry, I'm aware that the microphone is going in and out. Is everything?
It's mainly okay, it's just every now and then it pops a bit. So.
Okay, just wanted to ensure that everybody could hear me. It's a bit slightly off-putting, but I'll continue. So within improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness, the Council reported its performance against its strategic objectives as set out within its corporate business plan to both the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board and Cabinet. However, within service performance, there are 2 areas that we have identified where there was failings in performance which we have raised as significant weaknesses, and as a result raised key recommendations. The first being the Social Housing Regulator report relating to its housing stock, and the second being a designation notice for non-major planning applications, identifying inadequate performance in both these areas. As a result, we have raised two further key recommendations. The first, in respect of the Social Housing Regulator, the requirements that they have set out for the Council, and the second being that the Council should address the backlog in non-major planning applications to ensure the removal of the designation notice as soon as possible. The last key recommendation that we raised relates to contract management and respect of breaches of within contract value and number of waivers. This again is a key recommendation that we have raised previously, and whilst we recognise that there has been an improvement in performance, this performance was not significant enough within 23-24 to mean that we did not raise this as a significant weakness. Within the 3E section, we've also raised 3 improvement recommendations. I would draw your attention to the improvement recommendation relating to Bristol Beacon to ensure that the Council reports to members and how it is ensuring the operational model delivers value for money for the Council and the residents of Bristol. The other relates to the Stepping Up programme, which I understand there will be questions, so at that point I will pause. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Obviously, there are some very significant areas of concern within this report. So, if you'd like to ask any questions of the external auditors, I've got David and then Nick.
Chair, can I make a proposal here, please, that we discuss all items on about this report apart from the bit about stepping up, and then one of our independent members actually chairs that section, please? Would that be...
Why would you ask that, Nick?
Pardon?
Why would you ask to do that?
The part of the report refers to a member who was shared the same bench as you up until last year, and I'm concerned that it might lead to some impartiality, please.
Well, I think the report is about what the Council, whether there are any shortcomings within the Council that need to be looked at in terms of what goes forward. I didn't see any conflict of interest there. I'm happy to take the other parts of the report first and then the discussion on stepping up if you want to, but I don't see there's any need for me not to chair that.
It does mention a particular individual though in the report.
But the report is about what the Council needs to do to look at the external audit findings and what they need to implement.
Should this go to a vote?
I don't see there's a need for it.
Chair, given the public interest in this matter, I think we need, and given that this is an issue raised within the report of perception, I think might be best to err on the side of caution, again, so we can retain confidence in the public in this matter.
I struggle to see how replacing a chair with another chair that might have political views on this, when we're all supposed to be sitting outside of politics for this committee. I struggle to see why there's any need to do that.
You're blocking statements. You're not impartial.
Here.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any need to look at chairing arrangements for this particular item. I wonder if the independent members have got any comment on that.
It's probably not going to be very helpful, but I don't think it's for us to
to make that decision. We wouldn't be able to vote on that anyway in terms of our remit. So I think it is for the members of the Audit Committee.
Okay, Tom, did you want?
Can I ask perhaps more senior council colleagues, because some of us have only been here since May, if there has been precedent in removing the Audit Committee chair in such a manner?
We're not aware that it's ever been done before, and I don't see any need to do it now. I'm happy to take as many questions as you want within the time allotted, and your questions are for the external auditors who brought this report, so they're not for me. So ask your questions, and that's Rob.
Are we doing the other thing that David suggested, which is asking all of our questions, not about stepping up first and then having a discrete section later?
I prefer to do it that way, but whichever way, yeah. Do members have questions on the non-stepping up items in this report, which to me are pretty substantial? Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's a couple of sort of key issues that I have questions on. First of all, the DSG deficits. If the statutory override comes to an end and the council has to write the deficit off against reserves, then in the opinion of the auditors, are there sufficient earmarked reserves that could be repurposed to write this off against?
Whilst we can provide a comment, it's more likely to be backward looking, so it's probably more appropriate for management to provide a response to that question. Councillor Acker.
Tony, did you want to come in on that?
I can do, Chair. Obviously the statutory override is in place until the end of the financial year. We have every indication from the government that they will review the overall financial position in relation to special educational needs and will come up with a future solution. So we're anticipating that there will be further announcements from the government in relation to this particular issue. Should the statutory override be removed, then obviously we will do a review of all reserves available and look to see what actions we would need to take in that space to mitigate the overall position, depending upon the size and the scale of the overspend at that point, the deficit at that point in time.
Thank you. I'd also like to talk about the Bristol Beacon, or the Constant Hall, as many people still call it. On page 303 of the bundle, and this is probably a question for Tony, I think. It says that discussions are underway to agree a new lease with the Bristol Music Trust. I wondered what the time frame was for concluding those discussions.
Chair, I'm not party to those ongoing conversations in detail, so I can't give you a timeline on when they'll be concluded.
Is that something we could find out and relay back to Councillor Acker?
Chair, we obviously need to discuss with the appropriate director the ongoing conversations in that space and what their likely view of any resolution would be.
Okay, can we add that to the work action plan? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for that. Yes, and the improvement recommendation refers to delivering an improved operating model that produces value for money for the council and residents of Bristol. Of course, the fact that, well, because of the terms of the lease, all the expenditure on the refurbishment was written off. If an improved operating model could be negotiated, that did deliver value for the council and residents of Bristol, is it possible that the value of the expenditure that has been incurred on the project could be written back, so a fixed asset recognised, and I presume that the other side would be a credit to reserves, because I would have thought that if the Bristol Beacon, if the expenditure on the Bristol Beacon was actually recognised in the accounts as an asset and not written off, then that would considerably improve the council's financial sustainability, because presumably the other side of that would go into reserves, and that would considerably improve the council's position with regard to its reserves. Is my understanding on that correct?
Chair, if there was any material change in position, obviously in the trading activity of the trust, and that under the revised lease there was anticipated to be payments made to the council, then yes, that would have an impact on the value of the asset. But this would have to be a significant change in the trading position, to how I understand it.
So we've strayed slightly from the recommendations, but I think I understand where you've come from, Jonathan.
So the potential exists for an improvement. I would have thought a significant improvement in the council's financial sustainability if an improved operating model for the Bristol Beacon could deliver value to the council, which would result in the expenditure on the project being recognised.
So, Chair, just to repeat what I said previously, it would have to be a significant change in the operating model for it to make any material difference.
Right, Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair.
Rob?
I have two questions on procurement. So, looking at page 307 of the big bundle and also the following page, you've made two findings about procurement. The first is about the number of breaches, to say that the number of breaches have gone down but still an issue. And on the second page, an issue around contract management, saying that there's a delegated approach to contract management and it's better in some places than others. So good that that's highlighted. I wanted to ask about the recommendations, because there's a key recommendation for number of contract breaches, but it just says that the council should consider what further action is needed. And the improvement recommendation, so the level below for contract management, is the council to ensure that contracts are managed consistently. I think it's really helpful that you've highlighted those issues, and of all the other issues that you've identified, this is the one that is the most specific to Bristol. There are no particular sector or industry issues that you expect this to happen, which is not the case for adult or children's social care. I'm slightly nervous that the recommendations themselves are quite unspecific. So is there anything that you think we should specifically be doing better?
Let me think about, in respect of taking the recommendation on the key recommendation, which is on page 307, I think I mean, there's undoubtedly there's actions being taken, and action is resulting in improvement in arrangements. I think, I guess what we've done here and why we've not been specific and said you should do X or Y is because we as auditors, we don't actually, if that will be successful. So I'm aware of what's been happening, and I've been aware of, you know, where people, the actions are being taken. I mean, it's that, you know, what is that next step and what else could the council do to, you know, ensure that the improvement journey continues. So I guess what I'm saying, I can't be specific for that one.
I think if I may, Chair, the only thing I would add to that is, as you can see from the table that's reported, in the first quarter of the next financial year, after our report's key focus, things are clearly improving quite significantly. And at the time that we, as an audit function, we are, by our nature, retrospective rather than prospective, we can see clearly from that same table that during 23-24 there were significant issues, both in the number and the value of procurement breaches, but that has dropped off quite significantly. And so it also helps to reflect the fact that clearly action is already being taken. So we are trying to impress on management the importance of continuing to consider whether those actions continue to work or whether further action needs to be taken, and management are best placed to be able to identify, as Jeanette said, what those further actions may look like, given they're the ones who are taking action currently rather than us.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I'd add, Chair, is I think the substantive issue is on the work plan. So I think it's really important that when that issue comes before us as an issue, that those management responses are more specific than the recommendations we have so far. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. David.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to talk about page 305, the significant weaknesses identified in the repairs to council homes. So I'd like to try and understand the rationale for it not happening in the first place, because my ward, Lockleys, has a large number of 1950s council houses, and I was speaking to estates management about mould problems in those homes back in 2022. So I'd like to understand why there was no money allotted to actually do these things, as per being a good landlord, as I would expect Bristol City Council to be. Do we know why this was, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a question for the external auditors, is it? Tony, is it something?
Chair, obviously predates me, but in relation to the HRA, there were significant budgets identified for repair and maintenance at that time within the HRA cycle. I think there was an element of improvement in that place anticipated, but obviously with the new regulator coming in, so post 2022, I think we were referring back to, obviously that's increased the sort of awareness and the focus of the department, and as a result of that, their reviews have been undertaken, including reviews with external advisors which have identified those gaps, and therefore they are now addressing those gaps.
So perhaps I'll refresh my question. Was the external auditors made aware of any particular decision gate where it was decided not to fund these things?
Not as far as I'm aware.
So they were just slipped off somebody's decision-making radar?
Chair, again, as I say, it predates me, and I haven't reviewed the 2022-2023 HRA, but I do understand there were significant provisions for repairs and maintenance. It's more about the prioritisation and direction of that. I'm not aware of any work which was suggesting that it was potentially underfunded based on the information that was available at the time. But further investigation has identified weaknesses and shortfalls in that area, and now they are being addressed as part of the action plan.
can we have some information supplied to us about why those decisions were taken or not?
Can you clarify what decisions you're referring to, David?
So, we've got a massive backlog of repairs to our council housing stock that weren't achieved, and I'm just wondering if the decision was made on a basis of not having people to do it, not having enough money to do it, not realising the problem was there. I'd be interested to know that.
I'm struggling to wonder whether this is a question that this committee should be answering, or whether it's something that we need to ask for information from elsewhere for David to get him his answers. But what you're saying is, why weren't repairs carried out when money was available? That's your question, basically. I guess, Tony, could you take that away and see if you can come up with an answer from...
Chair, it may be difficult to go back and understand the controlling mind at that point in time that decided on the programme of works which were actually undertaken during that period. As I've said in previous responses, Chair, a number of these areas have been identified in recent months in response to the new regulator coming in, so I don't think the data was there to be ignored because the data wasn't reviewed.
David, I'm struggling to try and help sort of get somewhere with this, but I think you're making an assumption that decisions were made not to spend money, but that's not necessarily what the report is saying.
I just want to know, being a good landlord is part of the council's remit of existence, and making sure that those properties are habitable to live in should be top of that list. So I'm just interested in why it slipped off.
And you're making an assumption there that it did slip off and that just the work wasn't carried out when it was budgeted for, which is, I think, probably more likely. Yeah. But I'm not sure how that relates to the report. I'm trying to formulate a way we could put an action to this that relates to the external auditor's recommendations.
So my only thought would be we've identified all of these repairs that need to be carried out. At what point was the council actually aware that they needed to be carried out?
Yeah, and I think Tony said that many of them have been recent as a result of the government's new regulations.
My understanding, Chair, it is the piece of work which was commissioned from Savills in response to the new regulator coming in was at the point in time where the organisation recognised the shortfall in that space, so it reverts back to that.
Sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt again. There's a
sorry,
specific,
Dan, it's not a public part of the meeting, so you can't actually interrupt at this point.
In June 2023,
sorry, Dan.
In June 2023, the decision was made to spend up to £2 million on HRA stock condition surveys. These have not been done. There have been no stock condition surveys done for the past 4 years up until a few months ago. That's a clear example of money not being spent after a decision to spend the money has been taken.
Yeah, I'll come in. I think Tony touched on it actually in respect of there was a third-party review. The council, therefore, on the back of that, self-referred to the regulator, and that so there was a part of understanding where they were going to be and where they were going to land with the regulator, but were preempting that, and so therefore worked closely with the regulator to develop their action plan that's in place, and I think that comes out in the management comment.
Thank you. Tom, I think you had a question.
So, somewhat in relation to procurement, although I won't steal Rob's thunder, with the contract breaches, if I remember correctly, this was identifying that there were contract breaches, but while we aren't certain whether or not they delivered value money, there's then certainty that there was no allegations of fraud going on with any of these contract breaches? Am I correct in stating that there's been no worries of that kind?
If I remember correctly as well, I remember a response that Denise made the previous year, wasn't it? That a breach doesn't mean it's necessarily a breach within the law, but it's more likely a breach in respect of the council's procedures.
Thank you. That's always good to hear, and just to clarify on that. Second point is on page 295 of the Big Pack 17 of the report. Obviously, our reserves and our financial situation will remain difficult, but I know that the leader of the council has expressed some concerns about the possibility of a deficit. Now, my financial literacy may not be up to snuff, but our reserves seem reasonably healthy, and the recommendations suggest that we are quite if we're not financially healthy, we aren't in any danger of a deficit within the next year or two. Now, we've just said auditing is by its nature retrospective, but it would be good to have some assurances that we aren't in that bleaker financial position, as has been expressed.
I think, as our report sets out, we have withdrawn, or I've said they no longer holds the key recommendation that we raised last time in respect of reserves. As reserves are always at any point in time there can be an issue or something occurs that can have an impact on your reserves, but as we wrote this report, we were satisfied that there was sufficient, and we were not there was no significant risk around the level of reserves, hence we said that key recommendation that we raised previously no longer held.
Did you want to come in, Tony? No.
Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to refer to Appendix C, which is the follow-up from previous years, and if I've read it correctly, there's about 40% of recommendations there that haven't been implemented yet, and then we can cross-refer to Simba's report, where I think it's about 30% of audit recommendations are overdue and not yet implemented. I just wondered if Grant Fulton could give us a view as an audit committee how concerned we should be by that.
I think there is undoubtedly an element of those, because we are still holding the key recommendations that they appear as being out, because they are outstanding, that still is in place. And I think in comparison to other authorities, you are not dissimilar. You know, we are seeing a significant number of councils with key recommendations relating to financial sustainability. For the lower level improvement recommendations, I think it would be a positive thing to be on the back of that and going, you know, ensuring that those are updated and addressed in a timely manner. I mean, there are some that, I relate to one that's Bristol Energy that's outstanding because it cannot yet be resolved. So there are some that are understandable. There's also the WECA is an example where you're working with others, so it's more difficult to address, but you know, it's about giving the focus and emphasis to ensure that things progress in the right manner.
Chair, may I add that I think it's a really good question for members to be asking and to be monitoring that action is being taken. What I would reiterate is what Jeanette said, is that just because they remain on that tracker, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening, but it is useful to be monitoring that what you would expect from your own experiences is happening, or at least something is happening.
Did you have a question, Patrick?
Yes. Thank you. So we've got a lot of improvement recommendations, key recommendations and so on throughout this report, and I was wondering when Audit Committee will next get sight of progress or evaluating the progress that's been made towards meeting those recommendations. Will that be in the next Grant Thornton report that we receive?
So we formally report progress on an annual basis as part of our annual Auditor's Annual Report, so it's likely to be this time next year. What I see at some other committees is that separately progress is reported against audit recommendations, and that is a matter for the committee to consider, but that can be a helpful way of doing exactly what Simon has just asked the question on, and what you've also just asked, Councillor McAllister.
Thank you very much. I do think it would be really useful if the committee could get a sort of slightly quicker update on some of these recommendations, certainly. So I think in particular, off the top of my head, I think the DSG issues, the EHCP backlogs, the addressing the social housing regulator fines, the planning backlog, these are all issues with immense public interest as well as very large financial implications for the council. So I think it would be very useful if we could hear an update on progress to meeting those recommendations sooner than a year's time from now, please. Appreciate work's quite tight on the work programme.
So, Chair, what we are doing is we are working with finance colleagues to explore the use of the better audit system to follow all external audit reports, which would mean that all the agreed audit actions will be in the system, so we will end up reporting them in the same way we report internal audit actions. But specific to this, possibly, probably, I don't know whether Tony want to comment on the specific around this report, but in general, we'll be doing that.
So, Chair, in relation to, in addition to also tracking the actual actions, obviously a number of these issues are service issues which are considered by the policy committees on a regular basis. DSG deficit is reported on a monthly basis to the appropriate committee, etc. So there isn't a lack of activity or a lack of reporting in relation to these key issues. There is a visibility, but obviously from an audit point of view, we can ensure that you have visibility of the delivery of the actions as well, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That's reassuring. I think it would be good if we could have that visibility, please. Thank you.
Okay, we got any other questions on this? Abdul?
Thank you, Chair. Just if you go to page 292, right at the end, it talks about the decision to enter into the safety law programme has been referred for judicial review, and that's going to be heard in December 2024, it seems. In terms of audit and your findings, what implications does this have? What if the outcome is negative for us? What could potentially happen, and how much of a risk are we at?
So from a financial statements perspective, if I take that item first, as you heard in the report summary that Tony gave around the financial statements, a contingent liability has been disclosed within the accounts in relation to any potential costs that may arise as a result of that finding. Given it's so uncertain right now, it's hard to understand what they might look like, but there could be additional costs. In terms of what we expect, given that we work with a number of authorities who are facing a similar position, we expect that there may need to be some form of renegotiation, rediscussion and resubmission with the Department for Education, but management may have a more up-to-date knowledge of that. That's my understanding at this point in time, but it's very early days in terms of where that judicial review may land.
So who is conducting this judicial review, and is this the government?
My understanding is it's a legal challenge that's been brought by residents or members of the public.
Okay, thank you.
So go through the courts. Yeah. Okay, are we? Patrick, you got one more, or do you want to move on to the stepping up item?
Well, I am keen to hear that item, of course, but I did have one more question. I noted in June 2023, the Cabinet approved a stock survey of the HRA, and I just want to come back to the discussion we were having on that earlier. Could I check when the first results from that survey were received, because that would seem to have a bearing on the discussion from earlier about the social housing regulator?
Chair, I can't respond to that question. Obviously, we can get the appropriate director to respond to the audit committee, but it is within the remit of the housing committee performance in that space.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just that would have a bearing on some of the discussions we were having earlier. I think, given that there was that pretty substantial piece of work commissioned at the time. Thank you.
Okay. So if it's okay now, we'll move on to that item that we separated out on the Stepping Up programme. And if I can take questions for, I've got Tom first and then Nick.
Thank you. So, with regards, I know that Rob also wants to again most likely touch on procurement law here, but the recommendation number 7, the council has declared their interest to rise, all contracts should be reported, etc. I'm a little concerned that these don't really go far enough. I believe that Nick may also have stated something along the lines of, this is more or less restating the guidance that already exists, which was clearly insufficient in this case. So I wonder if, are the auditors convinced this is sufficient, or is there an argument for a more stringent review process?
So I think the key distinction to be mindful of here is that through our review we didn't identify any actual undisclosed matters that we felt should have been disclosed. Our report picks up on the fact that we identified perceptions. Now, we do believe, and we have included within our recommendation, that we think there should be some consideration of how perceptions are considered as part of these matters. But as a result, given it is perception rather than actual, this is why we have determined an improvement level recommendation is the most appropriate course of action in this case.
There were actual breaches. I've noted them in my statement. I can't sit here and listen to this.
Okay, thank you for that response. Secondly, just with regards to the contract register not being updated, as said, relatively new, I'm not sure whose responsibility this sits with. Would that sit with the member in question? Was there an officer whose general job was to sort of examine these register? I'm not quite sure who the responsibility rested with there, and some clarification would be helpful.
My understanding is that it would sit with the central procurement team, but they need to be notified of the contracts that have been set up.
Okay, thank you. And third question, noting the point on the council constitution not requiring connections to be disclosed, and this was ultimately a matter of perception, acknowledging that. Does this suggest the fact that had there been such connections, does this suggest a weakness in the ethics of the council's constitution arrangements? Should we be regarding this as a deficiency in how the council is operating? I'm not saying that anyone needs to give me a solution on this, but I want to be certain that we are abiding by principles of good governance throughout, that we're responding by good ethics, and I'm a little bit worried about this from the Nolan Principles perspective.
So your specific question was not part of the scope of our review, so not something that I can answer. It would probably be more appropriate for internal consideration to answer that question for you, either if it's known now or through some form of consideration after the fact.
We very much welcome the internal perspective.
Nick, I think you're next.
Thank you, Chair. This item does stand out above the others, which I think is why we're doing it separately here. And I'll just start out that I am minded to ask for more information, but I'll give us a chance to go through some questions now. I think what's unusual about this is it was identified by a member of the public, not our own internal audit team, which, given so real concerns were identified, that perhaps should have been picked up internally. I agree with Councillor Blenkinsop that the recommendation you've given us of just use our existing procedures better is a little weak. while we're talking about conflicts of interest training, which is one of the outcomes, I do believe that declaring a perceived conflict of interest is the criteria, not just saying, well, I don't think it's a conflict of interest. One should consider whether it would be perceived externally as such. Of course, it's not just related to an elected member here. There were others involved in the process of signing off these contracts. And it does seem to me that one of the contracts still seems to be in place. So this isn't just a historic issue relating to 2018, but there is still the Stepping Up Leadership CIC contract operational. So things that I would like to see either now or in a further report are around who was involved in creating this report. Was it just the council, or were members of the public, whistleblowers and the affected individuals contributors to this report? Crucially, we want to know, did anything illegal occur? And that isn't stated bluntly in the sheet you've given us. And if not, then what were the contract rules that were broken specifically? It's been mentioned earlier the potential for a public interest report. You said it didn't meet the threshold of a public interest report. And I would be interested to find out a bit more about what is the purpose of a public interest report, if you could give us some background there, and why you felt that it wasn't appropriate in this instance. And so I'll let you have a go with those, and we'll see if the answers are convincing.
If I start, but I think primarily I should only really answer the question in relation to the public interest report. The other specific matters, we have undertaken work and we have reported what we feel is appropriate to report to you as members in the form of improvement recommendations. Other more detailed questions I think are more appropriate to be put to management rather than to us in order for specific answers. In terms of a public interest report, so I've put some guidance up so that I can make sure I'm really clear with you. We as auditors are to consider the significance of the matter or the weakness in the arrangements which has come to our attention. Now, as you know, the numbers in our reporting document that the total spend is in the region of £600,000. Our materiality threshold for the audit is almost another 50% of that again, so it's well below, sorry, our triviality threshold, not materiality. It's well below the threshold at which we would, in normal circumstances, report items to this committee. We are reporting it to you because we feel it is important enough that it warrants the reporting, but in terms of the significance of the item, it is financially insignificant.
Cheshire East.
We also consider and recognise, or need to consider and recognise any concern and ensure that the authority is taking action in an appropriate and timely way. Now, we have reported through our auditor's annual report a number of issues in relation to procurement and then this specific issue. In order to ensure that that action is being taken, we do not feel that there is any need for a wider public interest report in order to be able to do that. We are able to use our current powers through our auditor's annual report to do as that guidance suggests. We are to consider what information is already in the public domain. This is a public meeting, this is a public committee. This item is in the public domain. The public have not only raised questions but also made statements in relation to this. And as has already been mentioned, a member of the public brought this to our attention through their freedom of information requests. So this matter is in the public domain already, and as such, a public interest report would not bring this matter to the attention of the public. It is already within their attention. We are to consider the form of reporting and which one is likely to be the most effective. This is the first report that would be coming to you as members, and hence it was the quickest way to be able to report these matters to you, and therefore in our view was effective, and whether previous reporting has been acted upon, and if not, consider how we respond to that. Again, you will see through our auditor's annual report that a number of procurement-related weaknesses have been reported previously, and we continue to report those and report progress against them, which was as evidenced through the table that was included within the auditor's annual report. So that is where we've come to the determination, both now and previously when we first considered this matter, that a public interest report was not required and that the threshold had not been met.
So, Beth, can I just come in there and ask a question? In a public interest report, would the scope be wider than what you've already investigated, or would it be similar? You know, what would the difference be between you've reported on this, but it's below the thresholds that would generate a public interest report, but what would you do differently in a public interest report if you had undertaken one?
There wouldn't be anything different in terms of the work that we have undertaken. The level of reporting would be slightly different, and the terminology and the language would also be likely to be different, given it would be much more, we would be utilising our statutory powers, therefore it is a much more formalised manner of flagging issues to the authority. Instead, we are utilising improvement recommendations where we are saying there is work to do here, but we are not suggesting that it is as significant as we would be if we were utilising a public interest report.
Okay, thanks. Rob?
I have two questions, but my colleague has asked the first one. It's always good to know that there are other people interested in procurement. I want to be clear if the law has been broken. So you have a question of the total value of the first of the three was approaching the procurement threshold, and the second two, there was a competition, albeit not very wide. The procurement threshold in 2020 was 189,000, excluding VAT. I'm assuming the figures are inclusive of VAT. So the only reason to think that this wasn't a breach was if it was several different orders which were not part of the same thing. So your perception, was the law broken?
From our understanding and the information that we have obtained to support our assessment, we're not legal experts, and I should start by saying that, and it is a question that, should you want legal expertise on it, it'd be better directed elsewhere. However, the initial contract was for less than the EU threshold.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. And I think that given the considerable public interest in this issue and the fact that it's not likely to go away, I think that the Council's best interest would be served by commissioning an independent legal investigation into the Stepping Up programme, and I think that the public would then have confidence that the Council is looking at the issues raised in detail and looking at the issues raised in their widest sense, and I think that would actually, regardless of the findings of the reports, I think that would provide confidence in the way that the Council handles such matters.
So, John, if I can come in there, because Nick raised something similar before the meeting in terms of what this committee can and can't do. So I did take this to legal for their advice, and what legal have said is the committee does not have the remit to commission investigation other than from internal or external auditors. It could not commission a report from external lawyers or ask officers to do so. So we're bound by the fact that we're being told by our legal department that our audit committee does not have the authority to do that, or it's not within our remit.
Thank you, Chair. If that's the legal position, then that's the legal position. I do think that under the circumstances, external independent inquiry would be warranted. But if that is beyond the powers that we have
as a committee.
Yeah, I mean,
Clearly there's...
that's the advice I've received from the legal team. If you would like us as a committee to write to the legal team and ask if there is any, you know, or whether we have the authority to do that, we can do that to get an official response, but, you know, having had the response already, it would seem a bit pointless to do that. David?
Sure, I wonder if I could come in with some quotes from the Constitution. Article 10, Audit Committee and Value and Ethics Subcommittee. The Audit Committee and the Values and Ethics Subcommittee will operate in accordance with the terms of reference set out in Part 3.2 of the Constitution in terms of how committee chairs are set up. And Part 3.2, Terms of Reference and Functions of Committees, point 8, says it can establish subcommittees and delegate functions to them. Could we not delegate a subcommittee to do this investigation?
Well, as I say, the advice I've had is that we couldn't we don't have the remit to commission an investigation, and we're certainly not able to carry out an investigation ourselves. I don't think we don't have that.
But that's contrary to the Constitution. We can set up a committee to do something, and we could set up a committee to do just that.
Tony?
Chair, a subcommittee can only basically do things that the main committee could do in the first place. So you can only delegate to a subcommittee something you're in a position to do. So if you're not in a position to basically get an independent review of this, then you can't delegate it to a subcommittee and ask them to do something which you couldn't delegate to them.
Cara, did you want to come in?
I'm told that financially the amount we're looking at is not significant and not substantial in terms of the council's overall budget. But I think this seems to me a matter that's more than just about what's financial. This is a matter about what's right and what's proper. And would the chair agree with me that there is considerable interest and valid concern that there have been shortcuts? They've been, well, we'd like to know what there's been. Would the chair agree that this requires further investigation?
I agree that there's considerable interest been generated in this. I'm not going to make a judgment myself on other than what I've read from the audit reports on what needs to be done to improve our procedures in this way. But what I do know is that I've been advised that we cannot set up an investigation ourselves into this matter. So, that's the legal advice I've got. So I can't take that further. If I was absolutely desperate to do it, I still couldn't do it. But what we can do, we can, if you can think of something else that you would like our internal audit or external auditors to do that they haven't already done. What I don't think we can do is ask our external audit team to go away and come back with a different answer to the same question, because I think that would be morally wrong. They've carried out their investigation independently of us, and they've come up with their recommendations. I don't think we could go away and say those recommendations aren't good enough, come back with some different ones.
There are important questions to be answered, and you're saying it's not this committee that's going to answer them, but what action was taken after it came to light that the Deputy Mayor did not declare their interest in 2020? If that's not an audit question, whose question is it? We need answers to those questions, otherwise we risk undermining trust in our political institutions, and I see that as very significant. Why did the Deputy Mayor use one name as a councillor and another as a company director? I don't understand how that's acceptable and why nobody's asking questions about that. And it may not be in the terms of reference, but we need to find somewhere we can get answers to those questions.
I raised that with the monitoring officer and the head of legal.
Did the Deputy Mayor make any attempt to make it abundantly clear that these two were the same person? And wouldn't that have been the responsible and honest thing to do? And what other situations did the Deputy Mayor use that alternative name in? These are all important questions that as a council we should be looking for answers to.
So, still waiting to find out or to come up with a way that the audit committee could do this, that it has within its remit to do. That's the question. Nick.
Thank you. Well, I don't think that we have disagreement then that we, having looked at our external auditor's report and finding that they are unable to answer questions right now, aren't able to go and expand that report for us. We can ask them to revisit the matter, give us a more detailed report that addresses the issues that have been raised in this meeting and the issues that have been raised in the public statements, and we will receive that expanded report as a committee at a future meeting. I think that that is within our scope, and it's something that I would like to propose.
I think, through Chair, I think it's for Beth to respond, isn't it? Because your report said, yeah, that's probably the most appropriate way to do this.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Simba. From our perspective, that would be highly unusual to ask an external auditor to re-present findings from work we've already undertaken. It is unlikely that it is something that we could do. I can take it away and confirm with colleagues, conscious that I am not the key audit partner for this authority. I can confirm with the key audit partner, but I would be surprised if he would agree to undertaking work again on a subject that we have already concluded on.
Okay, are you happy that Beth takes that away and confers with their colleagues about what they feel, whether there is anything else they feel they could do on this issue?
I think the advice that we've received from our legal team is that that is something that we can ask them to do, isn't it? That's what the email we got from our lawyers this morning.
Sorry, Simon, I couldn't see you there, but I think did you want to come in here?
Well, I was just going to wonder whether a potential way forward is to ask if there are further questions that members want answered in terms of our remit, is to ask internal audit to look at those specific questions. I think that's absolutely right. You wouldn't normally expect to go back and redo that in that sense. So recognising the position and the advice that the chair has taken, we could ask internal audit.
Just quickly respond to Councillor Coombs' comment. It would be unusual, highly unusual for us to redo the same work. Should the committee wish to ask us to consider a point that is new and has not previously been considered, then that is something that we as external auditors would consider, whether it fell within our remit and whether it was significant enough to warrant the consideration. But given we have already undertaken an investigation, were you to ask us to do that formally, we would be likely to respond and say, we have already considered it, please see the report that you have already received.
I think there are key questions that people want. You've already been asked, did anything illegal happen? And you felt confident to answer that, and yet it's not in the report that was presented. So it may not be about doing the additional work, but about presenting the information that you already have in an expanded format that answers more of the questions that are obviously raised.
Okay, I'm going to take some more questions, but I'm formulating all this as we go. Okay, I've got Abdul and then Tom.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that we're pushing up on an open door, and I appreciate that. But look, first of all, I just want to make a little kind of observation that this report points to some governance oversight. It points to procurement processes that could be improved. It points to financial mismanagement. But one of the things that I don't see is an impact assessment on the group that it was meant to be serving. And I think it's essential to have some type of further transparency in what's happened here. And not only is that for our interest in the current administration, but also to uphold a standard of respect for the previous person that's been implicated in this. And so, I think it's really important that we do some further work on this because of the people it was to serve. And we know that this was a programme that was dedicated to the BME community, to promote leadership and inclusion. And I think the recent concerns have stained it really badly, and we need, as a council, to have a mechanism where once this comes in front of us, that we can do something about it. And I feel that if we're as politicians we're all agreeing that that's the case, then there should be a task and finish group in a minor form. It doesn't have to be one of those major form ones that give the scope to our external auditors to do a bit more work on this. And that could be just to re-establish the respect of the previous, the previous leaders of this council. So please, and thank you for a very positive response to this. And I think that we need to stop this conversation now. We need to give that power to the external auditors to work with a few of us. If you call it task and finish group, fine. To just look a little bit further to make sure we've got all the facts here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a group would be appropriate, but I think we could collate the questions that the committee has and then find out from the external auditors whether all of those questions have been investigated. And then if there are questions that haven't been investigated, they feel appropriate to do so, then that could be done. But I wouldn't, but ruling out again, re-investigating things that they've already looked at, because I think we can't ask them to come to a second decision on things they've already looked at.
Understood.
But sorry, just before we come back in, your other point is about the value from. It's a value for money report, but the one thing we haven't talked about is the value for money, was what was delivered value for money. But I think in this respect, that is a separate discussion, isn't it? Because everything here seems to be focused on the contractual side of it and how they were rewarded. We haven't talked at all about whether what was delivered is actually, improved lives and that kind of thing.
Thank you, Chair, but what's coming from this is a lot of conversations on social media and in the media, and lots of people are contacting us as leaders. It's not a place to go into what people are saying. I just want some more facts on this. And one of the things on this report says that the Council have been unable to provide us with information to determine who was involved in the scoping of the spec of this project. And can I ask the auditors, the external auditors, why that was, and what type of so you conducted your own investigation to get to the bottom of what was happening here. So what was the reluctancy, and who was the reluctancy from, or was there no information to come forward that you requested in that regard?
So we can only deal with what we are provided, and we asked senior members of the organisation for evidence to support the matter, the sentence that you have pulled out from the Auditor's Annual Report, and they were unable to provide them. I can't comment on the specifics behind that. All I can tell you is we didn't just speak to a junior member of staff, for example. We went to senior officers within the organisation, and they were unable to provide us with that information.
So I come back to you, Chair. So this is exactly why I'm saying this is the type of question that we need answered, and I would appreciate that if we can, rather than...
So if the committee is happy, we will collate together what, the questions that we want to ask, and we will ask the external auditors whether they have considered these questions already and come to a conclusion, and if so, what was it? And if they haven't, whether they can investigate that further.
But Chair, one of the major things in this is that there is somebody that's been named in the report and implicated. We haven't even had a response from that person. And so for me, it's like, it's not a complete report and assessment of the situation. And if you agree that it is, I would challenge that. But I put it to you that we haven't even heard from the person that's been implicated in the report.
But I suppose what I'll come back to is what I said right at the beginning. We're not a pseudo judicial committee here. We can't call people as witnesses. It's not within our remit. So we're not here to carry out that kind of investigation. So we can't do that.
Well, that person might have information that they want to voluntarily submit. We haven't asked.
But our relationships are with our external auditors, our internal auditors, and officers.
And fair enough. I mean, we can do that. We don't ask the question. But the thing is, what we see in front of us as people that are the administration today, we need clarity on, and we don't want to make the same mistakes again in the future. So we need to have a clear set of information here that clarifies the information we see before us.
Well, Tom, did you want to comment?
Yes, so with some sympathy to what Abdul has said, to what Rob has said, to what Jonathan has said, I think it would be appropriate, and I understand we do not have that judicial power, we do not have that kind of legal position or whatever, but it would perhaps be good to write as part of setting up this collation or review group, or whatever we want to call it, that we also speak to legal and ask them to essentially advise what can be done to establish the legality or illegality, what powers are available to the council, perhaps not to the committee, but to the council, whether or not this needs to be referred further, and have a thorough review from legal services of what our options are and what we might or might not like to bring forward, because I feel that will cut through a lot of the discussion that we have going on, just so we have the options on the table from legal.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. Nick?
Thanks. I completely agree with what Tom said. We need to know what's available to us, but it may be the case that this committee cannot commission an independent legal review, as Councillor Hucker has said. However, the council can. Under the Localism Act, a council can do anything that an ordinary person can do. A member of the public could walk into a lawyer's office and pay them money to do a piece of work. So I'm absolutely convinced that this council can appoint an independent legal review. And perhaps the Councillor Hucker's motion just needs to be amended to say that the Audit Committee recommends that full council appoint an independent legal review. That seems to get around the objections of our solicitors and give us a resolution to this. And we could really do with a solicitor in the room. I'm sure there is one in the building.
Well, and you've mentioned a motion, but I've not heard anything from Councillor Hucker to that respect. But I thought we were kind of getting to a resolution here, which is we can find out what external audit have already investigated, and whether there are things that we feel should be investigated that they haven't yet looked at, that they can look at. We can ask our legal team how we... Sorry, Tom, to reprise what you said.
Essentially just say what our options are as a committee, what options might be available if, as Nick suggests, we bring it to full council, and what we can and can't do in this situation, really.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable way to proceed. But, John?
Thank you. Yes, I think it would be good to know what we can and can't do. Perhaps we should wait for that advice before deciding on our next step. But I do actually think that there needs to be an investigation that goes beyond the work of the external auditors. I personally would favour an investigation by lawyers, because the external auditors probably don't have the legal knowledge that would be required to carry out a full investigation. But perhaps we should have advice on exactly what powers are available to us before deciding on the next step. But I do think that there needs to be further work done on this, and I don't think that we can just leave it where it is. There does need to be further investigation.
One thing I will say is that I did ask for legal representation in this meeting, and I'm as disappointed as everybody else is that we haven't got it. Would the committee be happy if we set up a meeting with the legal team to go through this and discuss, what we can and can't do at this stage?
Can I also ask that we have the relevant officers present, so that we don't have to go to another level of meeting to ask the same questions that Grant Thornton asked and get answers to, please?
Okay, I'll take that on board, David, and we'll sort out outside this meeting. We'll sort out a meeting with relevant people there to discuss what our options are. Yeah, it wouldn't be a meeting it wouldn't be a public meeting, so we wouldn't be there to question officers, but we need to find out what options there are available to us to find out more, and including what we can and can't do legally. Is everybody okay? All right? Okay, thank you. I should try and get that done as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
My computer was shut down, bear with me. Okay, so the recommendation for this item is the Audit Committee note and comment as appropriate, which we've done, on Grant Thornton's interim auditor's annual report for 2023-24, focusing on their value for money assessment along with an action plan agreed by management. So can I take it that the committee is happy to note that report? Yes, Alison says. Okay, item 12 is Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2025. John, yes. Sorry for the wait, John, but I'm sure you appreciate these things. Can't be scheduled. Yeah.
So this is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. It's one of 3 reports. The other being the Treasury Management Strategy and the Treasury Management and Action Report, which recently supplied to you in September. This year, this mid-year report provides you a summary of the Treasury activity for the year, for the first half year. The report is no naming. There are no recommendations within this report. There is also no policy changes for the Treasury strategy that was approved by full Council in February 24. The Council has complied with all various codes, including the Central Code, Treasury Code, and the investment guidance issued by central government. The purposes of these codes are to ensure that the capital investment decisions are affordable, prudent, and sustainable, and within agreed parameters agreed by the Council, including the Treasury and investments activity carried out during the first half of the year. The key points of the report are: the Council has a medium-term net borrowing requirement of just under 996 million to support the General Fund and primarily new build capital programmes within the HRA. The Council has, for the first half of the year, borrowed £30 million short-term and is currently planning on borrowing a total of £140 million of short-term borrowing for the year to support the financing of the capital programme and ensure there's adequate Treasury resources available for the remainder of the year. The cost of such borrowing is included in the capital financing budget as well. A reduced capital programme has been reported within the monthly financial monitoring reports, with high-level details contained in this report. Predominantly, the HRA capital programme has been reprofiled The future periods and full update of the HRA 30-year business plan will be part of the 25-26 budget report. Borrowing is lower than estimated. Originally, we had estimated £315 million of a borrowing for 24-25. This would be in part due to the reprofiling and the delivery of the cover programme. This primarily relates to the reprofiling of the HRA programme, primarily the new build programme. Short-term borrowing is currently planned as interest rates across all maturity periods are expected to fall, and when these loans mature, we expect these loans to be refinanced at lower rates. Treasury investment balances were £68 million at the start of the year, and they are currently £65 million at the midway point. The treasury balance is expected to be around about £50 million for the remainder of the financial period as well. Treasury investments are invested in highly rated and liquid money market funds, and sometimes we will invest in fixed deposits with other local authorities and UK banks on long durations to pick up some additional yield and ensure these are staggered and laddered so flow receipts are available when cash is needed. The table on Power 12 provides a snapshot of the council's debt and treasury investments. There's a detailed economic update on Power 13, providing a commentary of the first 6 months of the year. Current report indicates that bank rate will fall to 4.5% in February 25 and then further falls to 3.5% in the late 26. The other points in the report, Power 25 refers to debt rescheduling. Due to the upshift in interest rates across all maturity periods, there may now be opportunities to reschedule debts, and we will update this further in future reports. The remainder of the report looks at various prudential indicators that the council have complied with. That's the key elements of the report, so I hand over to you for any questions.
Okay, so I think some of us have probably seen this report before, strategy and resources. And does anybody have any questions? Jonathan, let's keep it to under 10 minutes on this item if we can.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll keep it quick. So the council's borrowed 35 million so far this year. I presume that's from the PWLP? Is that?
So currently we're borrowing short term from the local authority market. So the PWLP only offer loans with a maturity range of either 1 to 50 years. So we're currently borrowing short term from the local authority market.
Okay, thanks. So the council borrowed 50 million last year, which I believe was from the PWLP. I think that had a maturity of a year. Is that right? That was relatively short term.
Yeah, that's correct. So they will mature a portion in the February, I believe, and then a portion in the April/May.
Okay, so that 50 million will be refinanced shortly. I guess it probably should have been shown under short-term borrowing in last year's section of the table. The remaining borrowing, which is expected to be drawn this year, is that going to be on a short-term basis? And will that be from the PWLP, or do you see any opportunity to fix for longer?
Yeah. So the current plan will be to either borrow from the local authority market or PWLP, whatever cheapest form of finance is available. Plan is to keep funding or borrowing short, as we're expecting rates to fall over the NTF, at which case then we would expect to refinance on a longer duration.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Any other questions? Karen?
Thanks for the report, and particularly appreciated the opening paragraphs of explaining the context of the HCPs and how the payments are affected. When we get to the point where we have limited assurance, the sentences which was largely driven by the child's EHCP not accurately reflecting the direct payment received by the child, I couldn't unpick that sentence. Am I on the wrong paper?
You're on the wrong paper, sorry.
I did that just before I started, actually.
There's nothing quite that exciting in the mid-year Treasury Management report, I don't think. That's item 14, just, right. Okay, are we happy to note the review and comment on papers which we've done, prepared for full council regarding proposed revisions to the council's procurement and contract management rules? No, sorry, I've got that wrong. It's all happening tonight, isn't it? Hang on. So the recommendation is that the mid-year Treasury Management Report for 2024-25 is noted. I take that. Thank you. Item 13 is the introduction of Capital Portfolio Management Office.
Chair, excuse me, not to delay proceedings, so I appreciate all the officers have been waiting very patiently, but I think the committee might benefit from a short comfort break. We have been going for about nearly 2.5 hours at this point.
I hear you.
Somewhat intense.
Can we take 5 minutes? Apologies.
Can I gently push back on that, because there is the vigil against violence against women and girls going on, which I think we might want to try and, at least certainly I was hoping to attend, and I don't know if other members of the committee were hoping to attend that vigil. So.
Can we just have just very quickly, if anybody needs to dash to the loo, can they just dash to the loo and then come back? If we don't actually need, if nobody's desperate for it, then we'll carry on. Is that okay?
I have no particularly strong feelings.
No, okay, it's just that sometimes, you can be sat here with your legs crossed desperately. Alright, we'll carry on. Move down to the front. Yeah. Can you introduce the item?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chair. Hi, I'm Pete Anderson. I'm the Director of Property Assets and Infrastructure, and alongside me, I'll introduce you to Sean Hoodmont, is the new Capital Portfolio Manager for the Council. So this paper was requested from the July Committee, which was to provide you with an overview and insight into the establishment of the Capital Programme Office, and to link the recommendations in the Lessons Learned report linked to Bristol Beacon in terms of how do we learn the lessons to improve our capital delivery. So the paper has a number of appendices which I'll refer to, which is in your packs, and hopefully it brings to life in terms of what we are doing, how we do it, and also the construct of the team that we're creating. So there's not a decision, it's to note in terms of for the report. So the report does outline in relation to the breakdown of the capital programme, the portfolio for this year, 24-25, and you can see that it's significant in the context of scale, as well as there is capital delivery in virtually all directorates or divisions within the council. And hopefully on page 350, the breakdown, as you can see, via scale and amount in relation to where the delivery of projects is. We've also tried to reiterate, if the committee wasn't aware, in relation to the decisions that we make and how we make them, in relation to governance with a corporate capital investment board, as well as a monthly capital delivery board, which is facilitated by the programme office via highlight reports and call-ins to ensure that all of the gateways processes, so all the gateway stages of programme delivery, the ragging status of when Green can be brought in and challenged. clearly one of the key outcomes of the establishment of the portfolio office is to improve delivery, both confidence of getting into delivery, but also ensuring that delivery with budget against forecast are closely aligned to ensure that we've got an effective delivery of the programme. I think the Audit Committee over the last 3 years has had several reports and reviews been brought to committee, further to the creation of the Capital Strategic Partnership, as well as recommendations around capital transformation. And I hope this report does bring to life in terms of the requests and the learning within those reports, but also linked to Bristol Beacon. The Appendix A highlights the level of resource that we've got or we've created in relation to project delivery, but it also brings to light in terms of those support functions, support divisions, which are now embedded into the process. For example, health and safety, particularly linked to construction, as well as risk team, as well as internal audit also. In terms of the 4 pillars of the portfolios of work from the lessons learned, I wanted to just draw out a number of things in relation to what the Capital PMO is doing. The Council is currently establishing a corporate landlord function, and it's very important that how we design that links closely with the project management office through the delivery of our project pipeline, our health and safety programme, and our repairs and maintenance schedule. We have expanded the core team to include the support functions that I've just highlighted, as well as devised new templates in relation to controls around finance, change control and exceptions. We've took lots of learning from the gateway process for our Capital Strategic Partnership and building those gateways into our process, as well as health checks on our programme at any stage where it can be called in, so a call-in process can be introduced. Clearly there's lots of learning from our contract types and our frameworks, which we need to ensure that we are adhering to, complying with, and can ensure that we've got clear and visible leadership. We highlighted in the report, so we have a champion for capital delivery at a senior level, John Smith, who's the Exec Director of Growth and Regen, and we've also introduced various number of service user groups across the programme types, as outlined at the start of the report. It's very varied and really important that we can check and challenge as we go through our processes. Appendix B also outlines the activity that is currently being worked through regarding the programme team, which does include a new creation of a new SharePoint site in relation to version control, document repository, and also guidance and steer for officers. It's important from a children and young people's perspective, the education capital, which is a relatively small part of the programme in its totality, but really important to ensure that the reporting is consistent with a wider capital delivery. And we've also introduced a closeout report approach, which includes lessons learned, which we're working through actively now on the Bristol Beacon project as that comes to a closure, and using the process, using Bristol Beacon as an opportunity to test the lessons learned process and the closeout stage work moving forward. So it's a piece of work we're doing live with Bristol Beacon at the moment. Hopefully that brings to life the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, hand shooting out there. I've got Nick and then David.
Thank you. It's excellent to see that the PMO is established. It's absolutely vital for running our capital portfolio effectively. 2 questions about extent. I didn't see a direct reference to the CRSTS, the Transport Capital Programme that's being managed with WECA, and nor did I see Gorham Homes, which is perhaps understandable as an arm's length company, but would also benefit from this approach to project management.
Thank you. The CRSTS programme is contained within the portfolio, within Highways and Transport, so that is a key deliverable, and Adam Crowther, the Strategic Transport Manager, is a key person on this particular group as well as the project lead. So yes, the pipeline of delivery is governed through the PMO. Gorham Homes is not an area which we would scrutinise in relation to the capital delivery. I know it's captured via competence assurance under the shareholder delivery, so in terms of delivery of quorum, we wouldn't be scrutinising it here. Sean, is that your understanding?
Yeah, I just want to add, so 2 of the roles within the PMO are transport PMO specific, so they're working with Adam and other colleagues, and regardless of the supplier or the strategic partner that we're working with, such as Warren and others, we will be focused on the internal monitoring of those things in terms of the project status, the reporting, the internal setup and structures, so there will be touch points with those.
David.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Pete, for your report. As part of the risk assessment on the table at 7.1, point 4 has stakeholder expectations regarding the pace and scale of change are not met, risking views that the model has failed. You talk about defining a measurable baseline. Does that infer that we will be getting KPIs in our performance report related to this project?
We haven't finalised those, but we look to develop them. So those KPIs are into development at the moment and can feed into other reporting mechanisms as needed.
Because that's a really important part of this committee, having assurance that the project's been delivered properly. Thank you.
Rob.
The proposals here are welcome, and it looks like you're addressing the concerns that have been raised. My question is on the independence of the PMO. So the PMO will only work well if it's got the expertise and the confidence and the capability to challenge assumptions and reports that you're getting from the teams. If it's just about, however the perfect templates are, if it's just about the process, it won't do that. It has to be able to make substantive decisions and to challenge the red and green, and challenge the time scale and the realism of what's being reported. Are you confident that it has the expertise and the independence to do that?
I think the PMO will go as far as it can. I think that's always a risk in terms of level of expertise and knowledge. Because of the variety and scale of the capital portfolio, it won't be possible to have 6 experts on all of the project types. And therefore we will use as best we can consistent practices, best practice to do that assurance and those reviews. So we're focused on plans, risk monitoring, project standards in terms of roles and responsibilities. So that will cover a wide variety of the elements we'd expect on any project. We'd expect support and the relevant services to provide some of those expertise. And we'll also be checking do the project business cases suggest they have the right resources involved to deliver those projects.
I think that's okay as far as it goes. I think you will come across, well, in that situation, you are likely to come across scenarios where you're not sure of the veracity or the realism of what you're being asked to do. And I would be more comfortable if you were able to commission external or independent or other reviews of that, if you didn't have the expertise to make that judgment. I'm not saying that you won't all the time, but you will, I think you will definitely come across things where you feel that you're not in a position to make that judgment. And it's important that in that situation you don't say it's Amber because the project manager says it's Amber. And you have to have the opportunity to do something about it, whether it's asking additional questions, which may be completely appropriate, or whether it's saying, actually, I need to find someone else who's not within the project group to be able to give a realistic commentary on it. Is that something that you would feel able to do?
My view is yes, we can do that, and we need to work really closely with our audit colleagues as well about understanding how we bring in external advice as and when it's needed.
Okay. I think that's really reassuring. I think possibly I'd quite like to know in the future, sort of 6, 9, 12 months later once it's established, it'd be quite good to know kind of how often that happens, or how often you do feel like you're changing a judgment or making a recommendation that's different to the original assumption. I think the committee would want to know that we are getting the value of that investment. I think that's as much as you can say today, but it'd be quite good to see how that works out in practice.
Yeah, I think it's important, Council, to also reflect that there is a healthy challenge from within. So that those red ambers, for example, in terms of ensuring that you've got that seniority and challenge, so that's baked into the terms of reference to ensure that an adult care delivery, maybe a question posed and challenged by a colleague in growth and regeneration, for example, or resources. So the governance does include the breadth of those services in that place to ensure we've got a healthy challenge, but more than happy to embed and then bring it back to the committee to demonstrate where we have sought external advice if required to ensure we get that deliverability, definitely.
Okay, I'll take one more question. I think Abdul, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. So, welcome this report, and I'm really happy to see some of the thematic lessons that have been learned from the Beacon report. What I was going to ask was that I know it's not only about these huge projects, but how will the benefit of this outweigh the potential costs of implementing this office? Because it doesn't tell us how much this is all costing us in terms of the introduction of capital portfolio management office. So I'm just wondering how much in cost, and so that we as members can assess. Obviously, I know there's a huge portfolio that's still worth us knowing. I think there doesn't seem to be anything attached to this.
That'll be linked to when we went through for the capital transformation sign-off. Clearly there was a cost to this, and I haven't got it in the paper, but to demonstrate, get into delivery quicker in relation to the best supplier, best challenge, in relation to ensuring that the risk appetite is analysed and understood, to ensure that we can make the decisions better and earlier. There's a value to that. I think I don't have that information right now, but we can bring that back by all means, or share that with you to demonstrate the value of what this is bringing.
Is it very quick, John?
It's a very quick one, thanks, Chair. I don't want to delay things, but following on from Councillor Malik's question, will the cost of the PMO team be fully recharged to capital and therefore have no impact on the very stretched revenue budgets that we have? Thank you.
It is fully recharged.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, recommendations. Note the progress made in establishing the Capital Portfolio Management Office, and note the findings from the Lessons Learned report from the Bristol Beacon project have been incorporated within the creation of the new Capital PMO. Everybody happy to know? Thank you very much. Okay, we now come on to the Internal Audit Half-Year Report 24-25. I will hand over to Simba for this.
Thank you, Chair. The report is in two parts. The first one just looked at the overall position where we are with the planned work, and the second part will look into the limited assurance reports. Chair, just to apologize that the Appendix 3, which deals with contract management, the relevant lead is on compassionate leave today and tomorrow. So we are proposing that we bring the contract management report back to the committee in January. It will also coincide with another update on the contract bridge, on the procurement bridges as well. I hope that's acceptable, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, I think my report, is probably self-explanatory, but I want just to emphasize on three things. The first one, we are slightly behind schedule. The main issue is that we spend more time in concluding 23-24, and you will recall that we have brought in, I think, 7 assurance reports to the committee, so that's the reason. And obviously the issue that we were trying to balance between doing the audit work and management facing other challenges. But we also struggled to recruit in terms of agent staff, but we have put in some measures that we will be able to deliver an opinion at the end of the year. We are doing what we can to make sure that we work with management to make sure that we speed the process of finalizing the audits. We have spent a lot of time on certifying grants. You see from Appendix 1 that a lot of grants have been signed off. I'm concerned by the slow progress that's being made in implementing the agreed management action. There's a table that shows where we are with that. I must, I think, emphasize that management are consciously aware of this. I think we've had significant debates. But the main issue that we found for this particular reporting period is that the action has not been updated in the management system. As a result, we wouldn't know whether they've been acted or not. So what we are doing is we are providing management with training from this Friday, once a week, starting this Friday until I think towards the end of December, to make sure that everyone is competent in using the system, because we believe that some actions have been implemented but they haven't been updated. So that's a concern that we need to resolve. I'll stop there, Chair, and take any questions in relation to the first part of my report.
Thanks, so I'm sure everybody's read the report. Any questions? David and then Abdul.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Simba, for putting item numbers on the work plan so you can actually reference them. It's very useful. Got a couple of questions about the work completed or in progress. There are two limited assurance reports, information asset ownership and refugee resettlement audit, lines 6 and 7, which have limited assurance. Are they coming to the next audit committee?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. Definitely. It's just the timing of that, but we'll bring that to the January meeting.
That's good. And there's another line 13, the Direct Schools Grant, ongoing. Considering the Grant Thornton view of that, when will we get visibility of that report, please?
So the work is primed to be completed in Q4. So if we do that audit work and the outcome is reasonable assurance or better, we'll just let you know. But if it becomes limited, we'll bring that report back to you. Unless if the committee is saying they want to see that report, regardless of the opinion, we'll do that. But the protocol is if we're going to audit that area and it's reasonable, we'll let you that the action, the outcome is reasonable assurance now, but if it is limited, we'll bring the full report.
What do people think? Do you want that report sooner rather than later, considering the...
No, I don't think he's saying it can come any sooner. He's just saying it won't come at all if it's above a certain threshold, but the work will still be undertaken in Q4.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think, given the other things in the report about stretched resources, I don't think we can push that any further.
Just to say, Chair, as well, the reason why we want to do the work in Q4, we want to have given management the opportunity to implement what they said to implement, so that when we give you the report, it will confirm that those actions have been done or not. Otherwise, if you go early, then we still probably not be able to give you sufficient assurance because some actions might have taken time to embed. But we'll do the work before the end of this financial year.
Any other questions? Nick has one.
So the report does say that there is declining management response, so I thought I'd better pass over to management. Tony is the representative of all managers. Why is it getting worse?
Sorry,
yeah, so I think we've got on page 363, there's a little graph that says management response fully implemented. It's getting worse over time. We're down to 1/3 of responses not implemented now. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, Chair. Obviously, this has been raised with CRB. It's unsatisfactory performance in relation to the activity. Simba has very helpfully set up surgeries to work with managers to make sure that we're we're basically getting this part of the process right, including the recording, which was welcomed by CRB, but yes, 70% delivery rate is not what we would expect, and we do need to make significant improvements in that space.
Yeah, Nick, I don't know if you missed it, but Simba mentioned that actually completing the reports on the system may be part of the reason why that's declined, because there are people, and that's what the training is they're rolling out. Patrick?
Thank you. Nicholas actually took my first question, and thank you for the answer on that. But I just have a quick question about the grant certification section, please. It says we're spending lots of audit time on this, and there wasn't any compliance issues, which is good, but we need some improvements in how management prepare and undertake for them. Can I check what's being done to ensure that management does do that preparation to make it a smooth process in the future, please?
I think there's been a lot of work that has been done now in terms of how we are managing both grants receivable and grants payable. So we've just done an audit about grants receivable, which was reasonable assurance, which means that I think the concerns that we had are now probably being dealt with. We are still finishing work around grants payable. So I'll be able to comment after that. But there's been a lot of improvement, especially maintaining a master register on all the grants that have been received and how they're distributed. So I think there's been a lot of improvement in the past 12 months than where we have been before.
Okay, can I move on to the recommendation, which is Audit Committee considers the work of the Internal Audit Service during the first half of 24-25 financial year and receives assurance on actions being taken to complete the agreed priorities. The Audit Committee notes the Children's Direct Payments and Contract Management Internal Audit Summary Reports, but these are the ones that are coming next time. Is that right? Oh.
So if the comments, that's okay, Chair.
I'm sure that was...
No, I've just thought about something, Chair. We'll do something different to make it easier for the committee. I think if the committee is happy with the first half of the report, we'll move into the next part. That is...
Yeah, apology.
Chair.
Yeah, continue.
So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Melanie to introduce that report, and then we've got colleagues from the service who will give you an update. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Carry on.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to quickly run through the summary of the work that we did on the Children's Social Care Direct Payments. Obviously, direct payments are provided to children and young people who have an education, health and care plan, and the aim is to help meet their individual social care needs. The Council's obviously got a key responsibility to make sure that the children's social care needs are being met and that the money is being spent appropriately and cost effectively. So our review had three objectives, one around the assessing the efficiency and effectiveness of the prepaid cards that are used to deliver that funding, and we found in that case that the Council had strong controls in place and that the spend on direct payments was tracked and in line with where it should be. However, the reason we gave limited assurance in this review was largely driven by a lack of evidence to demonstrate that the second two objectives in section 2.1 could be evidenced and assured. So we found discrepancies between information on the direct payments compared to the education, health and care plans. So we were unable in a number of cases to identify if needs had been met. And secondly, in a case where we found a number of children receiving multiple services, we were unable to find evidence to demonstrate the rationale for that, to see whether that was in line with policy or not, and hence why we raised the limited assurance rating. You'll see on section 5.1 that management agreed a number of actions to take in response to our findings, which they accepted, and all of those actions, according to management, have now been completed.
Kate's here to respond.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Kate Markley. I'm the Service Manager for Disabled Children and Specialist Services, and I'm here today for Fiona Tudge.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on, and sorry it's so late.
That's okay. I'm here to take any questions, and we have gone through the... one other thing I do want to clarify is the Children's Resource Panel that's mentioned in the report is a multi-agency panel with our education and health partners. So we're always triangulating across the three agencies that are responsible for the education, health and care plan, how we're sharing information and basically ensuring the children's needs are met across the three services. So I'm happy to take any questions.
David.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. On paragraph 4.7 of the key messages and findings, the high finding, for a sample of EHCPs, none of the 20 sampled EHCPs actually reflected the direct payment receipt. Can I ask some clarification questions around that? What was the total number of EHCPs that were being processed in the system at the time when this 20 sample was actually being taken, so that we can gauge how big the actual problem was? And also, was the direct payment less than what it should have been according to the EHCP in those cases when you did your sample, or was it more? Please.
So I haven't got the figure of the total number at that time, but I can certainly come back and report that to committee. So of the 20 that we sampled, we found that 18 had discrepancies. Some had incomplete information in them, and a number, 8 of them, had incorrectly recorded information. So, but I haven't got the information in front of me whether that was more or less.
I think that would be useful for us to scope how big the problem is, please. Yeah.
Sure.
Rob?
Following up on the area David's pointed to, it is a concern if the direct payment that's being made doesn't reflect the child's current needs. I want a bit more information over the first bullet point in paragraph 5.1, because the issue for us is what's changed. So there's a suggestion that I think your team are involved in the social care assessment before those changes are made. What I'm not clear about is what's different now, and will that prevent the sorts of concerns that David's identified?
Yeah, one of the things that's quite tricky is the time when a child, for example, has a review of their EHCP. That will be term time. For social care, we don't have term times. We're assessing and organising payments and support throughout the year. So if a child, for example, an easy one to explain is in August when the schools are shut, we in social care may set up a direct payment, make that active for a child so they're immediately receiving support. We don't wait to the start of the academic year. But that child's EHCP may have been reviewed in March or April of that year. We've then in social care got to know the additional needs of that child in the August. So that child's EHCP review might not take place for many more months. So what we've done on the system, the electronic system, is make sure that our SEND colleagues can see if there's been any change in the social care assessment, so they can go into that record and then get because the school organise the review, not us as the local authority. So then we're working with the schools to make sure that all that information is fed through together.
So is that process new? Or has that process changed since the audit?
Yes, it has, and also what's changed since the audit is the way we're recording and letting our SEND colleagues know that that information is on the system.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Cara, you had a question a couple of items ago which actually related to this item, I think. Did you still want to ask it?
No, I think I'm okay now, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Patrick, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. It's just a clarification question about the framing of this. And I have to say, when I first read it, I came away with the impression that it was talking about the misuse of payments once received by parents and guardians. My impression, having so read this again and listened to the discussion, is that the council has been paying the wrong amounts to people, so it's more an error of the council's end than the child's family or carer's end. Is my understanding correct? Am I getting the wrong end of the stick here, please?
Yes, I think so. So what happens is, because we use the prepaid card, the likelihood of somebody misspending or overspending since we've gone to that prepaid card system is extremely low. Before prepaid cards, parents were giving money directly into their bank accounts, and us trying to track and audit how that money was directly spent on the child's needs was a very tricky task. Since it's on the prepaid card, they can only use the card for the support services for the child. And so it's much easier for us to audit and work with parents and being really clear how that money's directly going on the child's needs.
So thank you. That's reassuring, but that was kind of my point. I'm looking at the sort of priority findings, for instance. Each of these didn't reflect the direct payment that was received. Is that not an issue on the council's end, then, that we're not paying the amounts reflected in the EHC plans?
The EHCP won't say directly how much money we give families. That's not the document in which we do that. The document we would do that is a support plan, which would be an appendices to the EHCP.
Okay, I'll defer to your expertise. I thought the direct payments were covered in section J of the EHC plans.
You put in hours, or you may put in a support plan, but the actual financial amount, because a child's education, health and care plan is done at key stages. So, but at the actual support a child may need from social care could fluctuate depending on the child's needs, the family needs. So you would put in, rather than direct amounts of X, Y, and Z, they would be in a separate support plan that we would then review every 6 months, which would be more often than that part of the education, health and care plan. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. I'll just note though that the framing of this, at least for me, I don't know if other members of the committee felt this as well, or if it was...
I'm still confused about what's gone wrong. Why did audit fail the service then?
Because the issue with the audit is that triangulating the child's EHCP record and the exact recording of what was on the child's system wasn't explicit and obvious and clear. And one of the things, and I'm picking up about how this report is done and reflecting that myself as well, one of the things is us making it really, really clear and triangulating much easier that information. And we're doing that across the system.
I think we would definitely support that. I think a couple of us have been slightly confused about what this report is trying to tell us, but I appreciate the work is ongoing, and it's good to see that the management actions, the management responses at the bottom of this report are underway. So it is very good and reassuring to see that. I'll just note again that the framing. My first impression was this was blaming parents and carers of 7 children, and I don't know if others. I know, but my first impression was that I don't know if other people received that, or maybe that was just my interpretation of it. I'm glad to see that's not the case.
Okay. Do we have any other questions on this item? No? Thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Yes. Can I now read that? Okay. Is that? No, these are the ones. That's the one that's been referred to. Yeah, I think you're out of the room to explain that one. Okay. Recommendations. The Audit Committee considers the work of the Internal Audit Service during the first half of the 24-25 financial year and receives assurance on actions being taken to complete the agreed priorities for the rest of the year. The Audit Committee notes the children's direct payments and contract management internal audit summary reports and takes assurance from management regarding the issues highlighted in the report. But we don't know contract management report.
We'll amend that.
Yeah, we'll amend that in the minutes. Okay. Everybody happy to know that that's still here? I do appreciate it. It's gone on a long time. Item 15 is counter fraud update. Louise.
Chair. I would just like to reiterate the key messages from the report that we've identified. Recoverable, is that better? Recoverable savings of £435,000, 1.6 million of notional savings, and those savings are calculated using figures provided to us by the Cabinet Office. And we've stopped collectively payments totalling £1,376 from being paid out each week incorrectly. We've also had 16 outcomes from our tenancy fraud work. There's only really one area of work that I particularly like to highlight with you, and that is the work that we've done around the new homes bonus. This was a significant piece of work that we led on, and we worked with colleagues in council tax and the empty homes unit in private housing. The aim was to identify properties that are empty in the city but that could be brought back into use. But we were also mindful that we could identify, it's going on and off a bit, isn't it? Identify council tax discounts and exemptions that could be claimed incorrectly. We did some particularly innovative data matching and data analysis, and then carried out 200 visits over a 2-week period. I'm apologising that we didn't quite collate the full outcomes and figures and the financial impact of that for this meeting. There will be a full report in our end-of-year report at the end of the year. You may be aware that the scheme, there's been a recent announcement to extend the scheme for a further year, so we'll also review what we did and how we did it and how we can support colleagues in the further year. And finally, just like to mention, in case you weren't aware, that last week was International Fraud Awareness Week, and hopefully you will have seen some of our internal and external messaging promoting our work. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this report? Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for all the good work that the counter fraud team do. Page 381 of the bundle refers to an issue that was reported, but it was found that fraud hadn't taken place. This is employees paid both as agency and BCC employees simultaneously. Are you able to provide a bit of detail about that?
It was referred to us, the circumstances was a relative, sorry, when I'm looking at that, I can't see you. It was a fairly short period of time, and it was basically an error, a series of errors and miscommunication. It was picked up fairly quickly, and the money was recovered from ongoing payments. So there was no fraud intent from any of the employees involved.
Okay, thank you. So there was no financial loss to the council there,
That's correct.
The money was recovered. Thank you.
Patrick.
Thank you. Actually, following from Councillor Hugger's point, do we have control in place to make sure such an error doesn't happen again in the department?
Yes, we have fed back to the appropriate persons and HR to ensure this doesn't happen again.
Thank you. And then a couple of other short questions, please. I noticed that under liaison with other organisations in the main report, under DWP benefits, we have a request to administer an administrative penalty. Excuse me. Is that a penalty to someone receiving benefits?
So it's a penalty. I'll put it in AdPen, which makes it easier to say. An AdPen is it's like a fine. It works like a fine. It's set out in the regulations as 50% of whatever the overpayment is. So that's a fixed amount, and it's payable on top of any excess that's been claimed. It does apply only to council tax reduction. For our purposes, I think there's different regulations for housing benefit. So if the DWP do an investigation and they want to administer an ad pen as an alternative to prosecution, so there has to be evidence to warrant prosecution. If it's in respect of council tax reduction, then they ask us to, because they don't deal with it, but obviously sometimes it's beneficial to deal with the things together if they're dealing with other benefits. So they come to us and ask our permission to review it and agree it or not.
Thank you, that's helpful. And then a couple of questions about the Appendix 1 list, please. On page 1 of that, it's got an instance where a Bristol Council supplier was a victim of crime. This was reported to Action Fraud, we advised the supplier. Are you able to give us any more elaboration on this, or updates on how that supplier's been dealing with that, whether we're still able to use them and so on, or is this, a matter for criminal investigation that we can't get into right now?
Sorry, remind me which one this is. Is this under?
So it's the first page of Appendix 1. I don't have the page reference actually. The page is 381 in the big bundle. It's the 5th item in the table under growth and regeneration.
I'll take it. I know that, Louise. I can take it.
Fine. You carry on, Simba.
So I think so. At first, it was suspected that somebody in the council was committing fraud by using BCC purchase orders. But actually what had happened was that we realized that the individual was putting BCC information and then putting an address in Wales. So that's when it was picked that actual fraud had been committed against the supplier by somebody, not by the BCC employee. And all we needed to do was just to alert the supplier and Action Fraud for them to investigate, but there's nothing more that we could do, and there was no loss to BCC.
Sorry, just to be clear, that this wasn't fraud being undertaken by someone within the City Council. It was an external fraudster purporting to represent the City Council and trying to get a third party to deliver goods to a non-BCC address.
Yeah.
This type of fraud happens all the time. Against with the names or identities of large institutions, sometimes fraudsters use published information to create a fake purchase order, usually small companies that we don't trade with, so they don't know what we're looking for. So it's quite pernicious, but it's really important that we advertise what the legitimate process is, so that it's as easy as possible for people to avoid that. I'd be surprised if it was one isolated case. I'm sure that this happens much, much more often. But thank you for explaining this.
Thank you. And yes, I agree completely with everything that Rob just said there. Entirely. And just on the final point I have on the second page of this appendix, we've got a section on contractor fraud, where the mitigating the outcome has been that we're not allocating further work to this supplier. From what I understand, this is when contractors falsify their records in respect of what work they've done. That's not uncommon either. So do we need more controls to determine how widespread an issue this might be in this particular sector? Obviously, it's great that we've flagged this up now and dealt with this, but how confident can we be that we're not being subject to more fraud in this area?
Okay, so, well, I think one of the key areas that we focus on when we deal with fraud is procurement fraud. And procurement fraud happens in two elements. It could happen along the whole process of the procurement through to poor contract management. So I think the best bit is to make sure that we've got adequate controls, which we test through the work we do through procurement compliance audits, And then we also test the adequacy and effectiveness of those of controls in relation to contract management audits. So you will see that on the plan, there is work that we are going to do around contract management. But you've also seen that as part of this report, again, there was an exception report about contract management. So this is an area that needs to be improved. But I'm sure that the organizations are aware that we need to improve the controls. So each time that we do the work, we do proactive work to identify fraud in procurement, but through the whole life cycle of the procurement process.
Nick, is it a quick one?
Yes, I noticed page 383, one of the whistleblowing cases you looked into was work being awarded to a company outside the correct procurement process. This is something we've talked about a little bit today. I just wondered the scope of your department in relation to that kind of investigation.
Sorry, that's in relation to a whistleblowing case, is that right? And I don't know the details of those, Simba. Can I pass that to you?
It's an in-principle case about it. Is that the sort of thing that you're equipped to investigate?
So we investigate anything that has to do with either the council's process or systems or abuse of assets. So anything that has to do with the council's systems or processes, we have the right to investigate. That's why we have that investigations team. But it depends on what we're investigating. What we don't investigate is the code of conduct matters relating to members.
Okay. Is the Audit Committee happy to note the half-year fraud report for 24-25? Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Next item 16, Internal Audit Quality Assurance Improvement Programme, Simba.
Chair, I'm going to be very quick. This is required by the Public and Internal Audit Standards that I must maintain a quality assurance improvement program that sets out how the internal audit service is run, which also includes maintaining quality, so it has to reflect both internal and external assessments. I'm going to end there, Chair, and I'll take questions on all the appendices.
Yeah, just say this is a very significant piece of work, I think. I'd like to thank the Chief Internal Auditor for his diligence in producing this. It's quite something. But does anybody have any questions before we note that particular report? David?
I'll ask the same question to you, Simba, as I asked Pete Anderson. Do we have is this report going to include KPIs that you can look on the performance pages, please?
No. So what we find is that within Appendix 1, I've indicated the areas that we need to focus on, which we will report back to the committee. So I've listed at the back of Appendix 1 the areas of improvement that we need to focus on, particularly the one to do with complying with the new standards that come into play 1st of April 2025. But the work that, all this work that I've put through here is earmarked to support the work that I report to you. For example, what I report to you in the half-year report and in the annual report. So I report to you through half-year and annual report. And I think some of the things that I put in the strategy, some of those things are ambitions for being a very good service. But so I won't have specific KPIs, but the work that I report to you through the annual report and half-year report should give you assurance that we are meeting the requirements of the standards.
I look forward to that report.
Thank you.
So, recommendation the Audit Committee to approve Internal Audit Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme, QAIP, Appendix 1, the Internal Audit 2, the Internal Audit Charter, Appendix 2, and 3, the Internal Audit Strategy, Appendix 3. Are we happy to approve? Thank you. Final item on today's agenda, 17, Internal Audit 2024-25, Q4 priorities, Alison.
Afternoon. So this report presents the Q4 priorities for internal audit. I'll take the report as read. The committee will be familiar with the fact that we plan our work quarterly, and you'll have heard us talk through the processes of how we do that before. This Q4 plan, you will start to see the audits in there of the previous limited or no assurance. So we re-audit those areas after a period of time. So you'll see those in the plan. Also, when putting this plan together, we've made sure that together with the Q1 to Q3 plans, this plus the Q4 plan will give us the audit coverage that we need to form our annual opinion at the end of the year. So just asking the committee to approve the Q4 priorities for internal audit and ensure it meets your assurance requirements too. The plan is Appendix 1, sorry.
Yes. Any questions? Rob?
Just questioning the 15 days allocation on procurement. I'm wondering if that is sufficient.
There is also coverage in Q3, in the Q3 plan, which isn't started yet, which is why you haven't seen it in the papers. But yes, it was planned in Q3 as well.
At that amount?
Sorry, so I can't quite remember the full figures, but there's additional work in Q1, well, Q1 to Q3 on procurement.
Understood. Thank you.
Nick?
Thanks. Just to raise a suggestion for the long list on Appendix 2, which is the Council's response to freedom of information requests. I understand we don't always provide everything we should at the deadlines that we're asked for. It would be useful to know that that's being investigated.
Again, I would just comment that that's in the Q3 plan. It's in the Q3 plan that you approved last meeting. It's not yet done, it's not started, but it is planned.
So should that be on one of these
No, because it's in
This
the
is Q4.
Q3 plan and this is the Q4 plan.
Patrick?
Thank you. There's, I know, again, Appendix 2, one of the areas of review under governance in the corporate direction is declarations of interest. Could I clarify if that counts for members or if that's just the corporate team, please? Sorry, by members, elected members, I suppose, if that wasn't obvious.
No, it's not. It excludes members because that's managed by the MO. We just do the stuff on. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick one. Appendix 2, one of the potential audit areas is bank reconciliation. Is that simply because it's due for an internal audit, or do you have some concerns there? I think the external auditors were reasonably happy with the bank reconciliation process.
Yeah, it's just with the core financial systems, we like to review them periodically, so it's just coming up for consideration.
David?
One quick clarification on the Q4 proposed plan. On page 420, which doesn't have line numbers on it, if we could have line numbers on it next time, that would be good. Under financial control, we're doing a re-audit of interest in account management. Now, just checking through my previous audit notes, that was a re-audit of a previously no assurance area, not limited assurance. Can we have that changed, please?
My apologies that it was no assurance. Thank you. Well picked up.
Sorry, just a small issue with the agenda. I think item number 16 is missing from ModGov, so just...
Yeah, it was missing, and it was emailed round to members because Alison had a problem uploading it to ModGov, but I believe it is there now because I was able to read it this morning. So, but did you get the email?
I'm sorry, I totally missed item number 16 because it wasn't part of the ModGov.
Okay.
It's still not there.
And it's still not there.
It is there. I've looked at it just now.
I've tried to...
There is supplementary publication.
Okay. I tried to...
It wouldn't
log
For some
in.
reason there's a gremlin, it would not, it wouldn't publish with the rest of the papers, so I had to do it separately.
So it shows, but as a supplementary, which you may not.
Probably we should just mention that at the beginning of the meetings that we were prepared, but it's okay, it's fine, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Recommendation. The Audit Committee review and approve the proposed quarter 4 priorities for 2024-25. In doing so, the committee should consider whether the priorities address the committee's assurance needs, which we've done. Is everybody happy to review and approve? Thank you very much. Okay, so I believe that's the end of the agenda, unless I've got things wrong. I've just got one last thing to say. Regrettably, this is my last meeting as chair of this audit committee. From the January meeting, Councillor Rob Logan will be taking over, subject to approval by full council in December. This is a decision I've taken along with my group as a result of the workload which my other roles as Chief Whip and Group Lead on 2 policy committees commit me to. I'm sure Councillor Logan will do a great job. I'm sure everyone will give him the same support that I have received as Chair. Thank you very much, and meeting closed.